Welcome to the Clackamas County Board of Commissioners on November 2nd, 2021, to the issues and updates. Gary Schmidt, you're up.
Thank you, Chair Smith. Commissioner Schrader is on her way. Let's get started, and I'll adjust the order here as we go, but we'll start with the first item, wildfire legislative relief proposals. There's a memo in your packet. I'll ask the assessor team to come forward. Tammy Little, County Assessor, Bronson Ruida, a Deputy County Assessor, and I don't know, Stephen, if you want to join or not, maybe? Attorneys, come on up. County Counsel. Kathleen Rastetter, please go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tammy Little, County Assessor. With me today is Bronson Rueda, Deputy Assessor, and Kathleen Rastetter, County Counsel. We're here this morning to bring 2 additional wildfire bills from the last legislative session. Both bills are permissive, giving the board discretion to implement, and both would require a resolution, board resolution, if you chose to adopt them. The first is House Bill 2247. The purpose of the bill was to assist business owners with the effects of both the 2020 wildfires and the COVID-19 pandemic. It applies to interest on taxes imposed in the 20-21 tax year only. The resolution would waive delinquent interest on real property that is associated with a business if the taxpayer can prove the taxes are delinquent substantially due to the effects of the pandemic and the 2020 wildfires. And it applies to interest imposed only on 20-21 tax year. The resolution, taxpayers would have 90 days from the date of the resolution to apply. To qualify, they cannot have had delinquent taxes prior to the start of the pandemic, which means no delinquent property taxes as of February 15, 2020, just before the emergency declaration. Applications would go directly to you, the county board, for your approval or denial, and the county would also be responsible for reporting the financial impact of the relief back to the Legislative Revenue Office by June 30, 2022. So we're here to answer your questions, any questions you may have in making your decision on House Bill 2247.
We're at 2247. Commissioners, do you have any comments to make on this?
That's good.
No? Okay, go ahead, Tammy.
Do you want me to go to the next bill?
Well, see, I'm going down to the recommendations. On 2247, your office remains neutral.
Correct.
But yet, how do you expect us to make a decision if you're neutral on this?
Well, the information I could provide to you to help make the decision is, we have no means at this time to run a report to find out how many accounts this might apply to. And so we really don't know how many applications, but we do believe, based on the numbers of delinquent accounts, that those qualifying would be fairly low. It would be a fairly low number. And it is possible that some of the amounts could potentially be high, but that depends on the applicant.
Is there time later to go back and do it? Does action need to be taken today? Or from this board on 2247?
I don't
I mean, you
think
have
that
the
it has
option to
be
run reports whenever you want.
Yes, but we don't have any data that would tell us how many people would qualify. We would have to receive the applications. There would be a fair amount of administrative work on these because of having to determine if they substantially have, or if they have delinquent taxes substantially due to the effects of the pandemic or the wildfires, making that determination. There would be many components that would have to be reviewed.
We have a couple commissioners with cards up. Commissioner Scholl, you're up.
Do I understand that many of the people who lost their homes in the wildfires were also behind in their property taxes? Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
And this particular bill is,
Thank
it
you.
only applies
Thank you,
to
Sean.
a business.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Paul?
I'm prepared to support going forward with the relief on HB 2247.
Kathleen, do you have a recommendation?
I don't specifically, but I would note if you probably do want to act now because this is relief for the 2021 tax year that they're just, now going to be sending out
And
statements for.
I don't have a problem with that. What I have a problem is with the staff report. The staff report is not a clear delineation. You're making a presentation here, but yet that says the assessor's office remains neutral. It's because it involves work. Is it involved what? I'm not understanding what you're saying, and I heard the same thing last week when you came forward, that, gee, this involves a lot of work. So I'm conflicted on what the board should do, but we have other commissioners that want to comment. Commissioner Fisher.
So if I'm reading this correctly, this is dealing with the interest that would be waived based on wildfire or COVID-related reasons that they can't pay in 2021.
Affecting a business.
So that would mean that.
But it was for 2021, so.
20, for last year.
Last
as well.
year.
Okay, so you would have to set up some criteria, some process of how to evaluate and how to be objective as far as any requests that would come through, so that would be extra work for you guys, obviously, is that correct?
Yes, we are not opposed, I just want to make a clarification, we are not opposed to doing the work. The reason that we're neutral is because this is in this bill, it's a decision by the board. So we want to come forward bringing in any information that you need, answering your questions. And then, of course, if you approve this, we support it, we would do the work. We would give you both pros and cons. One of the other pieces we put in the policy paper is that, just for consideration, is maintaining equity of interest payments to all taxpayers. So we're trying to present the pros and cons as asked for in the policy paper. Whatever your decision is, as a board, we would support and move forward and do the work. It is something that could strain our resources, so we're mentioning that, not that we're opposed to it.
Okay. I'm concerned. Go ahead.
Sorry,
No, that's all
Commissioner
right.
Fisher.
I'm just wanting to get a sense, because it's always a weighing, it's a cost-benefit analysis.
Right.
How much relief would the taxpayer get versus how much of a burden is it on government? Is it worth providing the relief, given the amount of work? I would think that we would know who was delinquent in 2020. And it seemed that most people did pay their taxes, surprisingly enough. We didn't have the expectation of delinquent taxes. So getting just some sort of idea of a cost-benefit analysis, because if we're going to be giving relief that is going to cost us so much to do, and it's not going to be that great of relief, then, and I'm just playing in my mind, so like there might be the small landlord that has maybe a couple properties and they didn't get rent and they hit hard times, they couldn't pay their property. I would want relief.
Right.
I don't want them to have to pay interest charges on those delinquent taxes when things are all COVID related.
Well, again, I would just say we would support whatever the decision is, and as far as how many this applies to and the amount of that relief, it is only on the delinquent interest with the specific qualification that they had to not have any delinquent interest prior to the start of the pandemic and not be delinquent on February 15th of 2020, last year. In addition, given the number of accounts that had delinquent taxes in February of last year, the number is relatively low. We don't know how many this.
Well, how do you find out? I mean, what would it take for you?
It's going to take applications being filed before we will know.
So how can we take an action on?
Taxes aren't due yet, so.
I know, I understand that, so I'm kind of perplexed. If they're not due yet and we don't know, why are we discussing this today? I feel very uncomfortable about moving forward either direction on this because I feel like I don't have enough information to do that. Is there a deadline on House Bill 2247 that we must comply with?
Is that in the bill, do you know?
I did not see one. They do anticipate you providing the report back to the legislature by June 20th of 2022, but I don't see anything that said,
Okay, so what we're going to
When
do,
you have
Board,
to
I
have it
think
done.
that we need to table this particular presentation on 2247 until we're more clear about what you're asking us to do. You say it's going to take a lot of time and effort, and it may not be worth your effort in the collections. I mean, it may cost you $10 to collect $1. I understand that, and it's not worth it, okay? I get that, but I'm not ready to take an action either way on this. Commissioner Savas, you have your hand up.
Well, I don't know about the rest of, I don't think it's as is laid out, that it's a small amount of money, and if they were truly met the criteria, then I think I would be sensitive to the impacts that they had suffered. So if it's only the interest, and it's a small amount as was suggested, I don't see any issue with it, and same goes for the second one as well, which does have a deadline.
Well, we haven't heard the second one yet,
Right.
so we're not going to make a decision on something we haven't heard yet from the presentation.
Okay. We would support Commissioner Savas and we agree that we believe that the numbers would be fairly low and the dollar amounts, I don't have a way to identify that amount, but with the number of accounts being low, the dollars, depending on the applicant, if it's a large industrial business, could be higher. If it is a small business, as you suggested, it would not be very high. So we would fully support whatever your decision is, and we will, if it's passed, we'll
Okay, I'm going to have you go ahead with your next presentation, and Commissioners, if you want to go back to this after we think about it for a minute, to 2247, but let's have you present the next item, Tammy.
Sure. The second bill is House Bill 5006. It was adopted by the state legislature, containing numerous appropriations, including a one-time apportionment, of $23.2 million approved for the Oregon Department of Revenue to make grants to counties for the reimbursement of lost property tax revenue related to the 2020 wildfires. The distribution is limited to the counties impacted by the wildfires. As you suggested, timing is important to passing this resolution. The county must notify the Department of Revenue by email and attach a copy of the resolution authorizing the request by December 1st, 2021, so right away. The resolution must include the amount of the request, a description of how you choose to distribute the money to the taxing districts in the county, and a commitment to report back to the Department of Revenue upon completion with the amounts distributed to each district. So based on guidance from the Department of Revenue, Clackamas County taxing districts will receive a total of $562,997 in grant funds to replace lost property tax revenue. The amount allocated to each impacted taxing district is based on the estimated property tax revenue lost during the 2020 wildfires. And Chair Smith, in this case, we would recommend passing this bill. It's dollars back to the county taxing districts. We would recommend the distribution look like this. Property taxes refunded this year in 2021 for the proration of the 2021 taxes would be distributed back to the districts using the 20-21 uniform distribution. The remainder of the grant reimbursing lost revenue starting with the 21-22 tax year would be distributed only to the districts impacted by the wildfires, where dollars in their district were removed from the roll because of loss. After the Department of Revenue receives our request, they will disperse the entire approved grant amount by December 31st of this year, and those dollars would be immediately distributed to the taxing districts around the county.
This one is more straightforward
Very
and
much so.
understandable. Gary, you have any comments on this?
Yeah, this one is a slam dunk, so I think that you could approve this post haste. We do have to do a resolution, it looks like, by December 1st, so we can get this on your business meeting agenda as soon as next week.
And then what action do we take on this today?
So on this one, if you approve, I suggest a motion, and then let's have
Okay.
formal approval.
Commissioner Savas, you're up. Thank you.
Yeah, I move to approve item 2 on HB 5006 and to distribute the balance of $446,166,000 only to the impacted districts.
Seconded.
Motion has been made by Commissioner Savas to approve the action necessary in House Bill 5006, and it's been seconded by Commissioner Scholl. Any further discussion on this?
So, I have a question.
Sonia, you're up.
Thank you. I know that there's property tax assessors that have statewide organization, because they come and present to Association of Oregon Counties.
Yeah.
Is there any effort statewide to deal with the administrative burden, to look at best practices for both 2447 and for this one? Because I can imagine that it might not just be within the normal course of your operations to
Well,
implement this.
We are part of the Oregon Association of County Assessors, and we have met with our association and discussed these bills. And the impact on 5006 is only to the 7 counties within the wildfire area. So those counties, we have met just with them separately. We are all following the guidance on that bill from the Department of Revenue that we received earlier this month. So there's not been a lot of discussion on it, and I think there's actually been even less discussion within our group on 2247.
Okay. Shannon, there's a motion on the table. Would you please call the poll?
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Chair Smith?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Now, for consideration on 2247, Gary, you're up.
Yes, so what I recommend is this. I think that, Tammy, I know that you don't have the data and that it's hard, you don't know it because we don't know who's going to apply for the extension or the late charge, but I do feel the board doesn't have all the information they need to make a fully informed decision. So I would suggest, let's pause on this one, come back to the board. An idea, I'm talking out loud, is we could do some sort of communication outreach with PGA support to businesses and say, will this impact you or not, in a formal type of gauge survey, so you actually can know how many businesses may be impacted, so you can have a dollar number, and then the number of it will cost for you to implement this program. So it appears there's not a total deadline on this, although yes, we're in the current tax year, but I think there's time to come back to the board with more financial information so they can make the informed decision. That's my recommendation.
We'll be happy to do our best to try to get some more definitive numbers. Two things I can tell you is that we believe the number of applicants would be likely below 5,000. And we also know that no one has reached out to us from the business community asking about this particular bill and its passage, so.
Okay. Paul, you're up.
Yeah, I would maybe suggest, after further thought on this, we just maybe come back in late February, after about 90 days has gone past the tax deadline, so to speak, and then maybe we have a better idea then and have a little more information by then.
Again, we'll do our best, but I want to make it clear that it isn't the tax that's due
Right.
now.
Right.
This is for the tax that was due November of 2015. If it were the delinquent portion that would be forgiven is anything due after the pandemic started in February.
Okay, so I understand that, and that's why, so this is like, I'm trying to grab some loose jello here to get my hands wrapped around what we're doing. I suggest that Gary has offered some assistance for outreach through PGE. I suggest highly you engage in some activity to do outreach to the businesses so we can get our arms around what the impact of this is.
We have no problem. We'll work with PGA
Thank
and
you.
do that.
Commissioner Fisher.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, just to reduce, there's always a transaction cost to everything, but we do have these business recovery centers. It might just be reaching out to them to ask, is this something that would be beneficial? The other thing that I'm pretty sure we would have is how many businesses are delinquent in Clackamas County. That shouldn't be too difficult to identify, is it?
Again, we're looking back a year, so that makes
Right.
it more difficult. I mean, I could tell you today, but going back a year changes that. We can do our best to estimate a very close number.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't you we'll just pause on this one for now and go back and regroup and
Is there
circle
any
around with Gary on this.
timeframe about pausing? That's one thing I'm not clear about.
Well, I
Is
just
there any
quickly
deadlines
reviewed the
here?
bill, and
No, I
I don't
asked
see a
and there's not.
deadline in it. It speaks to adopting the resolution for property taxes beginning July 2020, on just the things I listed, but it does not, other than the 90 days following the effective date of the resolution, that taxpayers may use that time period to apply.
Okay, so I guess at the end of the day, I would be okay moving forward on this one, as is Paul, simply because we're in recovery mode. Our business has really struggled. If we can just say your delinquent interest based on COVID-related or wildfire taxes is forgiven, that would be a good, strong message from this board that we are in support of this. I'm okay moving forward today, giving direction to Tammy to go ahead and do her magic and setting up the program and criteria. I was hoping it would be simpler for us based on statewide efforts. This is evolving statewide, that there would be, like we did with the rent assistance, there was some support for different jurisdictions. But I'm okay moving forward on this today.
With 2247.
Yeah. I think it sends a good message to our business community, and those that need it will apply. And quite frankly, talking to people out there, it's been a real struggle for some businesses. Other businesses have done okay. But for those that have struggled, I would want to get whatever relief we can as quickly as possible. So I'll go ahead and move that we move forward with this. I don't know if there's a second, but I will go ahead and make that motion.
I'll second it. I think we should. I'm looking at who was on the bill as well.
Who's on it?
Well, the one that jumps at me is Christine Drazen, and I trust her judgment. I don't know Beauchard and Davis, Smith, Wallen, Evans. I know Paul Evans. So they're usually pretty they're good representatives. They're good legislators. I think that they would do something that would truly benefit business.
So you're saying it has bipartisan support?
Yeah, it has bipartisan support and bipartisan support from people who are very level-headed.
Okay,
That's
good.
why, that would give me some comfort.
Any further discussion on this? Commissioner Savis or Scholl? Yeah, I can go either way. I mean,
Whatever y'all
if this
come-
is
I
the
don't wanna
will of
push
the board,
anything.
I don't have a problem with it. Gary?
So my only feedback is you don't know the financial impact. And we trust you, of course, Tammy, we're taking your word for it that it's minimal. Are you sure? Are you positive? Are you 100%? Will this be $1 million impact, $2
So
million?
I'm positive, Gary, that the number of accounts would be relatively low because we know we know the numbers that are delinquent. What I don't know is who may qualify and apply. So if it's a large property owner that would have a high amount of delinquent interest, that could potentially be significant. Where smaller businesses, I would say it would probably not be impactful.
Okay.
Commissioner Fisher, would you entertain an addition to your motion that she can look at the financial impact to her office while she does this?
Yeah, I don't think, from what I'm hearing from our assessor, she's not going to be able to give us an answer because she won't know who will apply. And I just think as the policy board for Clackamas County, us supporting our businesses regardless, because this is delinquent interest. This isn't the tax itself. This is just the interest for being delinquent. I just think that given what's been out of our businesses' control, them not being able to make those payments are probably out of their control also, and us waiving that based on this opportunity that the legislature has given us is worth it for us to move forward.
And we're fine with that. We're fine with the decision either way. One thing I can say is that we're not aware of another county that has acted on this piece of legislation, but we believe that Lane County may have a draft.
Who?
Lane County may have a draft of this bill going before their board. We can certainly take a look at any information they provided and try to bring more back if you choose to do that. Again, either way, passing or waiting for us to try to give you some more information, we're good either way.
Okay, we're going to vote on this. It goes up, down, whatever. Shannon, call the poll.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Commissioner Schull?
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Chair Smith?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Gary, what's up next?
Okay, thank you, Tammy, Bronson, and Kathy, very much. Next, new county courthouse project update. Gary Barth, project coordinator, manager for this project. We'll give you an update. Come forward, Gary. There you are. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. This will be brief. Just wanted to give you a quick progress check-in. This is part of our commitment to get before you every 6 weeks to give you a status update. Last week was a very productive week. We had the 3 teams that are moving forward in the competition. We're all here, excuse me, we're all here on site in person, including our consultant teams that we've had. So I had a chance to actually meet some folks face-to-face I've been working with for the last year and a half. And got to see all the project team members who we've been communicating with virtually. Chair Smith was there each morning to kick off our sessions with a welcome introductory message and a reaffirmation of the strategic priority of this project to these 3 project teams that are putting significant effort forward to win this project. They reconfirmed their qualifications, how highly qualified they were. They brought extensive teams with them in all aspects of financing, design, construction, facilities management, systems, integrations, et cetera. We went all day, 9 to 4. We had 2 general sessions. One was financial, predominantly financial, and going through the legal agreements and the technical language in the legal agreements. And then the second session was getting into the facility technical requirements and their first crack at design concepts. We had to be very cautious because they're competing with one another, and they were trying to get some reads from us about, what do you think if we went this direction or this on design? And when all we could say was, it complies or it does not comply with the technical requirements because you're competing on this. And so we're not going to give any one of those 3 teams an edge by tipping our hand at all. So required a little discipline on everybody's part on our side, but very productive meeting. We debriefed every day with our consultant team. We also had, of course, our Judge Steele and Debbie Spradley, trial court administrator, joined us every day, all day, to represent the functional and technical requirements in the request for proposal. And Elizabeth and her team of facilities and procurement folks were with us every day. Ryan Rice, the procurement manager, was there as our fairness coordinator, so he made sure that we stayed within the lines of public procurement process. So it went just extremely well. These teams came prepared. We got them on a short timeline, and they delivered. And we're right on track, right on progress. We got all of their inputs. We met yesterday as a team. We've got multiple meetings this week. And the way we respond to any of their inputs of suggested changes to our technical requirements or suggested changes to any of the technical agreements or legal agreements, we take back among a group, and if there's consensus that it's in the benefit of the county, because one of their suggestions are, we can get you the outcome you're looking for, and you don't need to have this technical requirement to get there, and we can save you money and still deliver. So when we hear things like that, we take a hard look. And so the way we will officially modify that is we'll submit addendums to the drafts of the RFP. So all 3 teams will always get an addendum update. Anything we discussed last week carries no weight unless it gets put into an addendum and published. So as an example of that, we had a couple of folks ask for a little bit of flexibility in submitting that first initial technical and financial submission. It was due November 10th. We all agreed it was in the best interest of ourselves and the team to give them until November 23rd. Get it wrapped up before Thanksgiving, but still get that submission in. And then we moved our second round of one-on-one meetings 1 week from December 7th, 8th, 9th to the following week. And we were able to kind of extend these.
So Gary, I'm going to interrupt you. On the briefing here, you have a timeline of technical and financial submittal due November 10th. That has been moved to November 23rd.
Correct. And it would have been in your packet, but we just confirmed it last night. And Ryan Rice, our procurement manager, we sent out the addendum to the 3 project teams by close of business yesterday and put it onto, we have a data warehouse, a data room that all the teams access. And so my next update, you'll have that updated calendar. But nothing changes on the back end. After March, we're still on schedule. So
Okay, that was
we
my
changed none of the deadlines on the back end. We're just making a couple of modifications.
And then the December 7th through 9th date is moved to what again?
That one has now moved to, find the right,
Thank you for letting me do this.
that one has moved to December 14th, 15th, and 16th.
Okay, great.
Gary, will you update this and send it to the board, the timeline sheet, please?
Before the next-
Retype the list with the updated dates.
Before the next update? You
Yes.
want it in the interim?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So Gary, it says here, just a little technical matter, based on the experience that I've had, it says November 10, before 10 a.m. What happens if they submit it at 10:30 a.m.?
They're out of compliance.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're going to hold true to that. Remember, Paul?
Oh, well, we did. If
Yeah,
you're talking about the late filing of the ambulance contract,
Yeah.
rules are rules, deadlines are
Rules
deadlines.
rules.
Deadlines are deadlines.
So, yes.
We had that during the queue process. We had somebody submit, and it got hung up in our email system, but they had evidence they had submitted it before the deadline. So we were able to go back, do the audit, and confirm they complied.
Okay, well, that's what I'm concerned about since they're email submissions, and holy cow. We have 3 commissioners with cards up, Gary, and I'm going to interrupt you now, and we'll entertain their questions, and then you can finish your presentation.
That's my update.
Okay, good. Commissioner Savas, you're up.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we're going through and following all the procurement laws and making sure that it's a process with integrity and all of that. So I'm not questioning any of that. I just want to put that out there, that this is a, obviously a process that's out for bid, RFP process, so to speak. But I am, as I'm reading the packet, this $5.4 million stated, the estimated cost to execute this procurement phase is 5.4. And half that is going to be paid for by the state. The rest is general fund, correct, Gary?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Wrong
No,
Gary.
Yeah, wrong Gary. I was looking at that, Gary.
That's Gary. Yes,
I was
correct.
looking at that, Gary, because that's where the buck stops.
That's right. I
That's
agree.
right. So that said, I just want to just clarify my understanding. So down in the next paragraph, the net present value of the projected availability payments of $170 million was approved by the board, as the affordability ceiling, meaning that is that fair to say that we anticipate that the bids will ideally fall below that mark?
Yeah, and they can't exceed it or they're disqualified.
Okay. And I just want to reiterate that, going back to our May 5th discussion, when we approved this, my heartburn was over some of the cost as they were allocated in different phases or categories, maintenance and so on and so forth. So there were some things there that did not ring as logical to me. And I'm just kind of concerned that if those are embedded within that $170 million ceiling, that still have those concerns. I just want to renew that concern, okay? And I won't go into detail. And then lastly, my last comment is that this is caused, including the 2.4 million, or the 2.5, or half that 5.4 million, this is going to put a lot of stress, and has put a lot of stress on our general fund, and will so for 30-plus years if the debt service comes in at the projected $8+ million a year debt service. So to all those listening, and all those that thinking we have endless amounts of cash, we're in a tight spot.
Gary, you want to address that? Commissioner?
Yeah, the procurement costs of a P3 are not unlike the procurement costs if we were to go out and procure an architect to design the building and then procure a contractor to build it and then procure a facility management company like Johnson Controls to build in the systems and then procure Piper Jaffray to do a full faith and credit bond issuance. So all those costs are kind of embedded in this 5.4 million that we're looking at, because the project agreement we're going to be bringing back to the board next year will include all of those components. It'll include the financing agreement, the facility management agreement over the long term, the design agreement, the architectural services, and the construction agreement. In addition, you'll have about, we're hopeful we'll get about 30% design done. So that's 5.4 million is also paying some of the architectural fees during this competitive process, so that when we pick a preferred proposer, they're going to have 70% design remaining with a guaranteed maximum price, with an affordability ceiling at or below the 170 target that the board set. And you'll still have the ability, you're still going to be approving and signing that project agreement next summer before any dollars are committed. These dollars are sunk because we are paying our consultants and we are paying stipends to the two losing proposers. So these are hard costs that will be, they'll be capitalized and rolled into the project moving forward. But if the board elects to not move forward, those costs will be just written off. But they are standard costs of a procurement of a capital project of this scope.
Yeah, Gary Schmidt, you're up.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Savas. Yes, this is a significant investment, which will be borne by the general fund, and we will be ready for it. And you're gonna have many financial conversations today, so I think I understand where you're coming from, Commissioner. Yes, this is a significant investment that we will be ready for, but we do not have unlimited cash. The board, you have to be very, very responsible for how you spend limited public dollars, as you are, and my job as your budget officer is to make sure you're doing that as well. So we'll work together to make sure that we are living within the means that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Schull, you're up.
Gary, on 6 April, technical proposal due. What will that consist of?
On April 6th,
It says technical proposal due. Are we going to be able to see?
yes, that will be the final, because through this process of these 3 rounds of one-on-one meetings, that's why we've been saying that they have a draft RFP and a draft project agreement. So at the end of these round meetings, we'll do all the addendums, and that will basically constitute the final RFP and the final draft project agreement. And then their submittals will be due to comply with that final RFP. So that will be the finals that we will be, the evaluation committee will be scoring. 70 points will be allocated to the technical proposals, 30 points to the financial proposals.
And so on that date, we're going to be able to see floor plan drawings? Is
You'll
that right?
see, about 30% design conceptual designs, yes.
Okay, thanks.
And floor plans and stacking diagrams and layouts and contingents, or the flows of the functional areas.
Okay, and then on 20 April, just 2 weeks later, we're going to see a financial proposal due on each of those?
Correct.
So we'll get a big picture on what the costs potentially are going to be?
Correct.
Okay.
And our consultants, Rebel, has a financial model that all 3 teams have. They'll provide us the inputs. We provide the output. So they're all going to be some, that NPV calculation, we're going to control that based on their inputs. So they tell us what the cost to construct, the cost to maintain, the cost of debt financing. We load it in, we spit out the result, and then we assign a numerical score to that result.
Okay, good, thank you.
Commissioner Fisher.
Thank you. So I have maybe 4 questions. First, I want to respond to what Commissioner Savas said to everyone who's listening about being a burden to our general fund, and what Gary Schmidt talked about in regards to having a sustainable budget. I want just like a head nod from Elizabeth, because I want to make sure that my assumptions are correct. We have debt service that will be retired within this, shall I say, decade of the 2020s, and that will help us cover the costs of this P3 arrangement when those payments come due. Okay, Elizabeth is shaking her head yes. I just want to assure for those, yeah.
It will help a little bit. It's not, there'll still be a gap, there'll still be a period of time with overlap, and that's the years we're.
Yeah,
Right.
it's years out.
Yeah, definitely some time with overlap, but we have been very meticulously planning to be financially responsible with this project over a lot of time. So I just wanted to clarify that, make sure I wasn't missing something. And then I just have a few other questions. My first question is, I know that the legislature was going to need some information to do their final piece. What is the status of the approval of the P3 agreement?
You just stole my thunder for my next 6-week update, but I'll give you the update now, is that we have provided, we met with the Oregon Judicial Department staff. They're the ones who will actually be producing the report. We're doing it jointly, but it's going to come from them to the legislature. We met with 2 representatives of the Legislative Fiscal Office and folks from OJD. We all got on a game plan. The game plan is we want to complete the draft funding agreement between the state and the county under the P3 arrangement, because that's a requested attachment to the budget report due to the legislature. As a refresher, the legislature authorized $94.5 million in bonds, but they only authorized $1 in expenditure, which was the headline of the Clackamas Review. State approves $1 for a new courthouse, but they've approved $94.5 million, subject to this report getting submitted. So the report, Nate Boderman on our staff and myself, we worked on the draft funding agreement, got it to them in August timeframe. But now they've assured us they will have their comments back within 2 weeks, and that was about a week ago. And no substantial comments. They're pretty comfortable with the funding draft.
So that's all moving forward.
All moving forward, so to wrap it up, we're early December, we hope to have the final draft report with that funding agreement, and then get it to the Joint Ways and Means Committee in early January, and then get it to the short session legislature in February to
Okay.
lift that ceiling.
Excellent. Okay, 2 other questions. I really like this time frame. Can't say I know what absolutely everything, single thing means and what's all involved with each area, but a couple things. I know Judge Steele has been part of all of the conversations and looking at, what are the things that are needed within the courthouse. I'm interested in, are we engaging a community advisory group? What are we doing to make sure we're connecting with others who are interested, and also making sure that we reach out to the disability community to make sure that ADA is looked at from a functional, practical perspective? What are we doing in that regard?
Yeah, the primary issue, we've got all the technical requirements in for that, and we're also complying with all the technical requirements of the Oregon OCCIF, the Oregon Courthouse Capital Construction Improvement Fund. So the OJD established facility requirements. So one of the reasons that Judge Steele and Debbie are there, they're representing OJD, who's mandating these if they're going to pay for 50% of the building. So they're not there as you have the authorization to approve this building going forward. They don't. But there are eyes and ears to make sure that we're complying with OJD's request. All these 3 firms that have all submitted all their qualifications, we've emphasized accessibility and as well as trauma-informed design. All 3 of them have brought they understand the concept of dealing with a courthouse. They all have extensive experience in courthouse design. So that's informing kind of this 30% design competition. But then when we get to completing the 70% design and we know who the preferred proposer is, an architect, that's when we'll really get into the deep engagement with that final revisions of design to ensure that we're connecting with all those communities. And we are going to be reaching out at Oregon City's recommendation to the local neighborhood association. We'll be working with PGA. There's nothing for them to weigh in on yet because nobody's going to be submitting any land use applications or approvals until they know they're the chosen one. But we want to at least get out ahead of the curve and let them know the project's underway.
Okay, and then what's planned for that community engagement piece, when we are going to get input from our community? And I was so heavily involved in Multnomah County's courthouse. I was part of the group that helped review everything. I was part of the legislative team. I was part of when they did the community engagement. So I have this whole idea of what happened there. I'm just interested
Yeah, and
in
we've-
what we will be doing to engage.
Yeah, we
folks.
followed up with Multnomah County to check on, that structure and the role that you played on all that. And a lot of it was that technical requirement definition that we've done through a lot of engagement with we've worked with all the defense attorneys, we've worked with all the advocacy groups on the technical requirements already. But we haven't formed, we haven't engaged the community on the final design, just community at large, folks that just want to come and have an expressed interest in it. We've consulted all those that are active users of the facility to define our initial technical requirements. So we're going to be complying with all of that. Every bidder is going to be complying with all that. But we still have community engagement work to do, but we'll be setting that strategy and plan up with the preferred proposer.
Thank you, Gary. Commissioners, we've got to move this along, or we're going to be here till a very long time past noon. Commissioner Savas, you're up. Please be brief.
Yeah, so Gary, just going back, when the bidder wins based on this premise that it's, be below 170 million. My question is that going forward, as the design goes from 30 to 70 and so on, I don't want to use the word opportunity, but I'm going to for lack of a better word at the moment, but what opportunities are there for the cost escalation that go beyond the 170?
We're certainly having conversations on that, but there'll be, when they submit their final proposals, they have to comply with the affordability. If all three firms come back and say because of price escalations and things happening in the commodities, et cetera, if all three firms come back and say, we can't deliver the project you want under 170 million on this MPV, then we come back to the board and say, what do you want to do? Do you want to,
Well, my question was
reduce
more-
the scope or increase the price?
Yeah, my question was more towards maybe months out after one's been selected.
We're locked in. We have a guaranteed maximum price in the contract. They absorb,
So there's no opportunity, what you're saying, there's zero opportunity for an escalation.
not unless there's a change order that we agree to.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to wrap this up. Gary, I appreciate your presentation today. Keep up the good work. Keep us informed as issues arise. Gary Schmidt, what's up next?
Thank you, Gary Barth. Quickly, Commissioners, back to the prior item on the wildfire relief. The resolution you have to do by December 1st, I propose we bring it to next week's business meeting.
That's
If that's
fine.
okay, we'll get that moving.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Next, with your approval, Chair, I'd like to move to the consent agenda list so we can get that done.
Yes, that's fine. Thank
Okay,
you.
let's start then. Consent agenda request, Health, Housing, Human Services, you're up first. Number one, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Human Services for licenses and access to the Homeless Management Information System. The agreement is to allow the county to bill the Oregon Department of Human Services $7,596, the actual cost of the licenses. No county general funds are involved. Rod, go ahead.
Yes, the HMIS is a centralized database used throughout Oregon to track outcomes for homeless programs and services. Oregon Department of Human Services must use this system to gauge the success of a homeless housing programs and to participate in data tracking for the Foster Youth to Independence program. There are no county general funds involved in this transaction.
Any objections? Hearing none.
Two, approval of a subrecipient agreement with Northwest Housing Alternatives to provide homeless shelter services funded with HUD Emergency Solutions Grant of $58,746. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, with this funding, Northwest Housing Alternatives will operate at the Annie Ross House Homeless Shelter, providing homelessness prevention and shelter services among individuals and families who are homeless or receiving homelessness assistance. No general fund is involved in this grant.
Any objections? Hearing none.
Three, approval of a cooperation agreement with Clackamas Service Center to fund $650,000 of the $950,000 estimated construction expenses for the Clackamas Services Center expansion project. Funding is through the Community Development Block Grant. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, the Clackamas Service Center Homeless Services expansion, this is expansion of the construction project, will renovate and expand an existing homeless service center buildings to allow for more homeless people to be offered access to services, including health care. No county general fund is involved in this transaction.
Any objections on this?
No, Chair, but I just want to make a comment. I appreciate our staff's good work in bringing these opportunities forward. This just speaks to, this is a series of two here. We do this almost every week. We are services that are provided for homeless folks that are aside and separate from the SHS funding that we have been doing historically for years, and I think that's not really being recognized. And so I just want to applaud staff for bringing this forward and point out that this is, we do a lot of things behind the scenes that have not been in the spotlight of supportive housing services.
Well, I would agree with that. Thank you for raising that issue, Commissioner Salas. Any objections to this? Seeing none.
4, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the State of Oregon Department of Human Services for the provision of Older American Act and Oregon Project Independence Services for Clackamas County residents over age 60 and over. Maximum agreement amount is $5,452,881, funded through the Federal Older American Act and state general funds, with a county general fund match of $298,750.
Yes, these services provided included nutrition programs, evidence-based health promotion activities, family caregiver supports, transportation, information and referral activities, and in-home services. And as mentioned earlier, there is a county general fund match of $298,750, but that brings you $5 million into the county.
Any comments or objections? Seeing none.
5, approval of a contract with SRS LLC for OnCall hotel rooms for temporary housing participants. Maximum contract value is $582,000, funded with Metro Supported Housing and Service Funds. No county general funds are involved.
Yeah, there are approximately 95 households still sheltered in hotels after placement there because of the high risk of COVID-19 infection. To avoid transitioning these households back into an unhoused situation while we are seeking permanent options, the county will contract with the motel-hotel owners to provide shelter during this time. This program is expected to end by March 31st, 2022.
Any comments?
Yeah, Rod, if we have our discussion later on the ARPA funds and our eligibility for this program under that to help free up other funds, this will actually not, if that happens, will actually be coming from ARPA perhaps?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll talk about that later. Thank you.
Any objections? Seeing none.
6, approval of an agreement with Ride Connection to provide $83,348 in House Bill 2017 funding for dedicated dialysis rides provided by social services, transportation reaching people. Funding through statewide transportation improvement funds. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, funding for social services transportation reaching people provides dedicated dialysis rides to assist older and disabled county residents in meeting their transportation needs to receive dialysis treatment. No county general funds are involved in this transaction.
Any objections? Hearing none.
7, approval of an agreement with Ride Connection to provide $85,349 in House Bill 2017 funding for dedicated medical rides provided by social services and transportation reaching people. Funding through statewide transportation improvement funds. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, this is similar to above, but it's a social services transportation reaching people provides dedicated medical rides to assist older and disabled county residents in meeting their transportation needs to receive medical treatment. No county general funds are involved in this transaction.
Any objections? Hearing none.
8, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the State of Oregon Department of Human Services for COVID pandemic response services for Clackamas County residents age 60 and over. Maximum agreement amount is $55,842, funded by Federal Older American Act funds. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, this agreement provides grant funding for Social Services Division to provide assessment and support for persons over 60 who have been impacted by the COVID pandemic. No county general funds are involved in this transaction.
Any objections? Seeing none.
9, approval of a local subrecipient grant agreement, amendment number 3 with Tudos Juntos for continuation of kindergarten partnership innovation services in Clackamas County. The amendment increases the total amount by $225,711 for a new maximum value of $512,052, funded through the State of Oregon Kindergarten Innovation Partnership Grant. No county general funds are involved.
Yes, this transaction allows Todos Juntos to continue to provide culturally responsive kindergarten partnership innovation services that increase kindergarten readiness for pre-kindergarten children and families living in rural Clackamas County. No county general funds are involved in this transaction.
Any objections to this? Seeing none. Thank you, Rod.
Thank you, Rod. Next, community corrections. One, approval of an intergovernmental agreement between the State of Oregon Department of Corrections and Clackamas County Community Corrections. The agreement provides $663,456 in funding for community corrections substance abuse programs for the 2021-2023 biennium, funded through the State of Oregon Measure 57 supplemental funds. No county general funds are involved. Malcolm, go ahead.
Good morning, Commissioners. This funding is supplemental funding provided by the Oregon Department of Corrections in the State of Oregon. It complements our Clackamas substance abuse program, so it's a small portion of the total budget. And it continues as a continuation of the prior biennium. So the dollar amount is a two-year dollar amount.
Could you introduce yourself and where you're from?
I apologize. Malcolm McDonald, Captain of the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office and Director of Community Corrections.
Thank you very much. Martha?
Yeah, I just have a question, Malcolm. So these dollars are for substance abuse, obviously. Are these folks that are on parole? Are they folks who are in one of our facilities? Could you be a little more specific
Yes,
about that?
the funding is provided for those that are under community supervision, so on probation or parole in Clackamas County, and specifically those that are eligible for state funding. So those are primarily felony cases they're on supervision for, and most recently domestic violence and certain possession of controlled substance cases.
Okay. Commissioner Scholl? Okay, Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, I'm just interested in where this money goes, like what, or does it go directly to nonprofits? Is it tied to the person? How is the funding, how is this services provided?
This money goes directly to the Clackamas Substance Abuse Program, so CSAP, the program.
Okay, CSAP.
Yes.
That's what I was thinking it probably did, but I just wasn't sure. Yeah, have you both been to CSAP tour? Oh, you really should go. It's amazing. Anyway, that's what I was just wanting to check. Thanks, Malcolm. Anybody,
you.
is it going anywhere else?
Next up?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Next up?
Two, approval of an intergovernmental grant agreement with Oregon Health and Science University for community corrections to build a client database for tracking clients involved with the state-funded Improved People's Access to Community-Based Treatment, Support, and Services Research Partner. Total funding received will be $23,368 from the State of Oregon Criminal Justice Commission. No county general funds are involved.
So this will go to, money will be provided to our research partner with OHSU for a grant that we got via Impacts, which is Improving People's Access to Community-Based Treatment, Support, and Services program that came out of a prior legislative session. The program is targeted towards individuals with serious mental health and substance abuse disorders. Specifically here in Clackamas County, we're targeting those that are under community supervision that have a severe mental illness and require additional wraparound services. But specifically, OHSU is our research partner on this project.
Comments, objections to this? Mark?
They're researching people who have had a history in the jail, or just everybody in Clackamas County who might fall under that category of mental health issue?
So specifically, it's individuals who are on probation or parole with a serious mental health disorder.
Okay.
Yeah, so just a question, both where Commissioner Scholl was going. So this is for research to identify, this isn't for services, this is to identify what's going on with people?
So Impacts is providing services. A part of this is to have a research partner to evaluate the services we're providing. Impacts came out of a legislative session, and a number of counties were provided funding. We were provided a small amount of funding to target that population and provide the population with wraparound services. We're looking at individuals that are high utilizers of the jail system, mental health system, and the hospital system.
And then when they do their research and their evaluation, then how does that come back? I'd be really interested in the product from that research.
It will come back at the end of the program. We don't know if there's going to be continuation of funding in this. Out of this lot, I don't believe there was out of the last legislative session. They geared their money in other directions, but we'll be able to evaluate, where statewide, what was working, what wasn't. I can tell you up front, the biggest challenge is the exchange of information between the various partners, between medical, the justice system, and behavioral health. And so there are being learning points that we're getting out of that and working through. It's been a slow process because of the pandemic. the funding was issued at the beginning of the pandemic. Everything came to a grinding halt. So we've been moving forward as we've come out of the pandemic.
And time frame for when we'll have a report?
The Criminal Justice Commission will do a final report on it, so I don't have a time frame at this point.
Just keep me posted.
Okay,
I mean, the
happy
way
to.
this integrates with everything else we're doing, it's really important information, so I appreciate
is.
it, Malcolm. Thank
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you. Up next?
3, approval of a subrecipient agreement amendment between Clackamas County Community Corrections and a subrecipient Oregon Health Science University for system-level diversion strategies. The amendment extends the agreement through September 30, 2022, funded through the United States Department of Justice. No county general funds are involved.
This is a no-cost extension for Bureau of Justice grant that we have. Specifically, it's funding a medication-assisted treatment coordinator in the jail. So it's really coordinating individuals suffering from a substance use disorder when they come into custody and identified, and giving them the opportunity to be on medication-assisted treatment and transition. So really, it's a continuation with our research partner for OHSU on this specific Bureau of Justice grant.
Okay, thank you. Any objections to this? Seeing none.
4, approval of an intergovernmental agreement and biennial plan between the State of Oregon Department of Corrections and Clackamas County Community Corrections. The intergovernmental agreement provides $16,119,747 grant and aid funding for community corrections program for the 2021-2023 biennium. No county general funds are involved.
So this is our largest funding source from the state of Oregon to fund the supervision of individuals on felony probation or post-prison supervision. Including this biennium, they approved the funding of those that are on charged with the domestic violence, assault 4, and sex abuse 3, which will be starting in January. Those cases will also be eligible for the state funding. This is a 2-year dollar amount, and this is the largest source of our revenue for community corrections.
Mr. Fisher?
Yeah, is this meeting the need? I know there's been some up and downs with what the legislature's allocated. Are we able to, is this funding adequate? Was it increased?
So the funding formula was improved greatly. Our biggest challenge going into the next biennium is the reduction in the number of individuals on supervision. It's based on an allocation, so we have seen a sharp drop in individuals on supervision in Clackamas County and statewide. As an example, between March, the start of the pandemic, and May of this year, there is approximately just under 500 less people on supervised supervision here for state-funded cases in Clackamas County. So there's a potential fiscal impact that I am watching closely and making adjustments so we're not left in a hole. I'm very frugal with how we spend our money and our positions, and I do not want to be in the position to lay people off. So that could change, and we need to adapt if it does.
Thank you very much.
That would be a good thing, that there are less people on supervision, or is it a systems problem?
I don't have an answer to that. Legislative changes and systems slow down.
The less people on
Yes,
supervision, that there's less people that have committed crimes that need supervision, or they've graduated out of probation.
Potentially, but with a pandemic and ballot measure 110, we'll have to see what so there's a number of
Okay, so
impacts.
there's a link between
Potentially.
those citations and not criminalizing the.
Okay, thank you. Look, Commissioners, we can go until 1 o'clock with the issues and updates, and we can have a brief lunch, so we're on time for our 1:30, or we can be more brief and try to get through all the work we have to do this morning. I'm sorry to have to offend anybody, but that's what, we've got to be on schedule. Thank you, Malcolm, for coming forward.
Thank you,
Gary, what's up
Commissioners.
next?
Thank you, Malcolm. Next, Clackamas County Sheriff's Office. Item 1, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Department of Forestry for law enforcement services in the Santiam State Forest. Services will initially be funded through the county general funds, but they will be fully reimbursed by the Oregon Department of Forestry at $30,000 per year, per fiscal year, for a total of 5 years, for a total contract value of $150,000. Nancy Artman is a finance manager in the Sheriff's Office. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, thank you. Yes, this is new funding for the Sheriff's Office and will allow us to expand patrol into the Santiam Forest, specifically in the portions that are within Clackamas County.
Any objections or questions? Seeing none.
All right, and 2, approval of a resolution delegating limited authority to the Sheriff, Angie Brandenburg, to accept a grant award through the United States Department of Justice, Office of Community-Oriented Policing Services online portal. Total federal award amount is $250,000, funded through the U.S. Department of Justice. No county general funds are involved.
I am not finding this with our link. Paul, are you finding these under the Sheriff's Office?
Well, I'm not really opening the link, so I haven't tried. Actually,
Okay.
if you
Thank
think,
you.
yeah, actually,
So-
I just did, so.
Did it
it's
work for
fine.
you? I got the community corrections link.
Sheriff's links are working for me. I don't know.
Clackamas County Sheriff's Office. Yeah, so I get the community corrections, but I have these, so I will just for the record abstain until I have a chance to review. But I'm sure it'll probably be just fine, because I know that they do the homework.
Any objections? Seeing none. Next.
Thank you, Nancy, very much. Next, Transportation and Development. 1, approval of an amendment for a local agency agreement with the State of Oregon, acting by and through the Department of Transportation for systemic signals and illumination design. Total grant amount is $252,900 with matching road funds equal to $27,455.62. No county general funds are involved. Dan Johnson, Director of Transportation and Development, go ahead.
Thank you so much. I'm going to make this simple. We have an arts grant right now. That grant includes design and construction with ODOT. This is simply breaking out it's an IG amendment that breaks out the design function as a separate entity. We will come back with the board with a future IGA for construction. It reduces the value of the contract overall.
Any objections? Seeing none.
2, approval of an amendment with Kittleson and Associates Incorporated for design services for South Ivy Street pedestrian and intersection improvements. The amendment adds $372,369.54 for a total contract value of $912,225.33. Funded through the county's road fund, state-funded local project funds, and the city of Canby. No county general funds are involved.
Thank you so much. This contract amendment will provide additional services required to support the expanded scope of the project as requested and funded by the city of Canby. These services include 27 additional right-of-way files for acquisition, additional mapping and descriptions, underground power design and connections to buildings, illumination design, additional traffic analysis, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Any, Paul?
Yeah, is this a road or a project to be transferred to the city?
We have not had that discussion yet.
Okay.
After it gets improved, that is the time to have that discussion.
Okay, any other objections? Thank you.
All right, next, Development Agency, release and termination of a post-closing escrow and development agreement between the Development Agency and Clackamas Corporate Park. No county general funds are involved. Go ahead.
This is a point in time you should all be celebrating, because I will never say the word chow again for those of you who have been around for a long time. Essentially, before you today is a release of a security deposit through some good work through the Development Agency in concert with Economic Development, where we turned a 70-acre gravel pit into an industrial park supporting 300,000 square feet of manufacturing. Essentially, the individual in which you went to the development agreement with has performed on all counts. We have information and evidence to that effect. Essentially, we have released that security deposit. This simply is a request to terminate that agreement.
Any objections? Seeing none.
All right, thanks, Dan. Next, District Attorney's Office, approval of an application for a grant agreement with the Oregon Department of Justice for child abuse multidisciplinary intervention program services. Total grant award is $1,040,851.29, funded through the state of Oregon. These are pass-through funds. No county general funds are involved. Would you introduce yourself, please?
Good morning, Mr. Schmidt and Commissioners. Nice to meet you. My name is Scott Healy. I'm the first Assistant District Attorney here in Clackamas County. I'm also our multidisciplinary chair, and I have been for like 5.5 or 6 years. You want me to explain
Yes,
this a little bit? Okay. So this is a routine request for money that we ask for every 2 years. It's through the state CAMI funds. CAMI stands for Child Abuse Multidisciplinary Intervention. So the bottom line is that this mostly goes to fund, and it's very important funds, it goes to fund in large part the Children's Center here in Clackamas County, which you're all probably familiar with, where all of our children that are either sexually abused, physically abused, or neglected go. Frankly, I've been doing this, you can tell just by looking at me, I've been doing this for 28 years. And so I worked with CARES, I worked with a lot of our centers, and we have, frankly, probably the best children's center in the state of Oregon, if not the Northwest. Other information goes to, other funds go to risk outreach, which we also call healthy boundaries and behaviors for children that are, say, under the age of 12 or so, that are engaging in risky sexual behaviors or behaviors that are concerning. There's sort of a gap there that we've noticed, and so we've put some of these funds towards that. The Children's Center has actually hired a coordinator that's going to do some outreach and also talk to parents that, if these, so that they can get them to resources to help these kids before they become significant offenders and get into the adult system. Then also we pay for the MDT coordinator. That's really not much. There's some monies that go towards training, which is helpful for all law enforcement, DHS, mental health folks, anybody that wants to apply, even folks from our office. We send them the training when we can. And we have a little bit of carryover from the pandemic because we didn't send people in person, which is actually nice, but we probably will start doing that this year. And then there's some for supplies. That's really what this grant is for, but it's very important. The large portion that goes to the Children's Center, as you know, I don't know for sure, but I think about half is funded and half of it is private money. So it's important that we get that money every year.
Thank you. Martha, you have a question.
Yeah, I really I'm glad that this goes towards the Children's Center. That's what I was going to ask you. I guess my question is, this is a DOJ grant. Do you get it regularly? Is it one time?
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years.
We've been doing this every 2 years since 2005.
Okay. And
It's a routine thing.
And they've been good about getting you those ongoing dollars for us.
Like clockwork.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Go forth and conquer.
Thank you, Chair Smith.
Thank you, Scott, very much.
Thank you.
Finally, Finance Department, approval of a contract with Matt Westbrook LLC for compliance and subrecipient monitoring services as required by the Uniform Grant Guidance. Total contract value not to exceed $250,000 for 2 years, funded through cost allocations from departments, some of which do include county general funds. Elizabeth Comfort's the Finance Director. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning. This contract is a new one for us. We typically have had an employee perform these services, but it's been challenging to find an employee. So we've contracted with Matt Westbrook previously to do these services, a subrecipient contract monitoring. And now we've formalized with an RFP process, and he won this particular effort, and then in 2 years, we'll go out again and we'll see what the county's needs are again at that time and if we need to make a change. So I request that we approve for the next 2 years for this contract.
Any questions, comments? Martha?
So uniform grant guidance, what exactly does that mean? Is that for all grants across the spectrum, whether it be human services, transportation, whatever? It's all donations.
Subrecipient grants.
Okay.
Where we have there are federal dollars for services to be performed outside of the county for the county. And so another entity is doing it on behalf of the county. And so they have to meet compliance regulations on the reporting. We've talked about this too, I think, with the BRCs and our ARPA dollars that we're utilizing, and then through BCS. So it helps keep those folks in compliance, know what they need to do.
Thank you.
Commissioner Shull?
Yeah, yes, Westbrook LLC, have they worked with Clackamas County on this matter in the past?
Correct.
They have? Okay, thank you.
Any objections? Seeing none.
All right, thank you, Elizabeth. So Commissioners, with your approval, all of these items will go on this Thursday's business meeting agenda. Is that okay?
Yes, it is.
Wonderful. Thank you. Back to the issues list. I'm jumping ahead. Shannon, let's do the advisory board and commission appointment. There is one. Go ahead, please, Shannon.
The North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District Milwaukee Community Center Advisory Board is staffed by North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. It currently has 3 openings on their commission due to term expirations. 12 members are allowed with 3-year terms. 3 applications were received and 3 are recommended to be appointed. Those are Julie Donahue, 2nd term, Marilyn Schrum, 2nd term, and Virginia Seitz, 4th term.
I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Seconded.
Commissioner Salas has moved to approve the appointment to the Milwaukee Community Center Advisory Board, and Commissioner Shull has a second to that. I see from my notes here, Shannon, is this correct? There are currently 3 vacancies that could be filled? I shouldn't have put you on the spot, but Gary, are we working on efforts to get those filled?
Yes.
Okay, good. Just wanted to know that.
Yes,
Thank
we
you
are.
very much,
Yes.
Gary, for that.
We always do.
We do.
right?
Anytime
That's
there's a,
matter of course.
we come to you as soon as we have an applicant we can appoint, but then we still keep the recruitment open to fill the remaining vacancies. We always do that on ABCs. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Hearing none, Shannon, please call the poll.
Commissioner Scholl,
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher,
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
Aye.
Chair Smith.
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, thank you. Back to the start of the issues, higher up on the issues list, we'll do, Rod, come forward, congregate and non-congregate housing. So there really are two different subjects here. One is an update on warming centers and shelters that Commissioner or Chair Smith asked for last week, as well as an update on the preparing for the policy session. Staff will prepare on sheltering and hotels, which is still upcoming, but to get your feedback as we're preparing for that policy session. So just with respect, commissioners, this is not to have the full debate today on either topic, but to get an update and find out what further information you need. Rod, you brought a whole team with you. Please introduce them.
Yes. So, for the record, I'm Rod Cook, Director of Health, Housing, and Human Services. To my left, we have Brenda Durbin. She's the Director of Social Services. To my right, I have Ed Johnson. He's our fiscal person. And then we have, to the far left, is Vahid Brown. He's heading up the Supportive Housing Services Initiative. You have the memos in front of you, and I sense that you want us to get right to it. So
Yep.
if it's okay, I would just hand this over to Brenda and let her talk a little bit about the warming shelters and where we're at with those. And I'll move the mic over here.
Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for the time today. So over 10 years, Clackamas County has helped to fund overnight winter warming shelters to ensure that people experiencing houselessness have some protection from the weather when the temperature is forecast to fall below 33 degrees. This year, we did a NOFO, Notice of Funding Opportunity, that reflects our changing climate. So the NOFO asked for responses for warming center, cooling center, and also for smoke centers. So folks who are living outdoors in the summertime when it can be extremely hot and smoky are also going to have some protection. So to date, we have received the following responses from the NOFO. Malala Hope is a small nonprofit that's operated warming centers for over 8 years. Their site can accommodate 32 guests. We are in the process of finalizing that contract. The Father's Heart is our longest-serving warming center. Their conditional use permit was initially denied by the City of Oregon City. I understand that due to House Bill 2006, the Father's Heart is appealing that denial, and I understand that we'll know on Thursday whether or not they'll be able to proceed. Their site can accommodate up to 49 guests. The Estacada Food Bank would be a new partner this year. They are partnering with Estacada Cares and the Estacada First Baptist Church. The Baptist Church would be the site. They have a very large capacity. We don't know how many folks overnight would be approved by the fire marshal, but we are negotiating that contract. And we are also in discussions with an entity in Canby and Sandy. So this year we may significantly impact the geographic scope of our warming center services. In addition to the site and the services, we're also appealing for interest in providing volunteer coordination and volunteer coordination and behavioral health services. This is in response to the needs that community have identified. So every year, our capacity is sort of mandated by the community capacity and by the funding that is available to us. This year, we do have some significant funding. A lot of it is one-time funding that must be spent, some of it by the end of the fiscal year, some of it by spring. So we have a significant dollar figure available to support these services. Then just real briefly, one other thing that we are considering this year is looking at using county staff and sites as surge capacity. So if we have another sort of 2-week, ice storm situation, the community capacity may not be sufficient. So Rod Cook is working with his colleagues to identify any challenges and then may move forward with a proposal to, again, surge capacity that would utilize some county assets.
We did that last year. We used the Development Services Building almost over, in 24 hours. We had a warming center set up overnight for that, right?
And who staffs that since it's in the county building?
Well, the cooling center was the first time we did that. It was county staff.
Sorry, I had the wrong season, sorry.
It was very warm, so it's definitely a shelter for the warm. So that was sort of a pilot. We learned a lot, so we're going to be a little more planful and organized when it comes to staffing up a winter warming center.
Was that in the auditorium?
Pardon?
Yes, it was in the auditorium?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
And actually, all the rooms in DSP down below the
First floor.
both sides.
Okay, good.
And how many people use that?
We had, I believe, 6 individuals access that site.
Okay, continue, please.
That's sort of it for the warming centers. You have information about the funding. I can answer any questions you might have about that. Again, new this year, we'll be using some of these funds to provide some rent assistance for people exiting the motel shelter program. Thanks to the state, they dropped $588,000 in our laps about 2 weeks ago, and they want us to spend it by the end of April. So in partnership with Vahid, we are looking at ways to fully spend those dollars, and one of those priorities will be to help put additional dollars into that first, last, and deposit, so individuals who are in the motel shelter program can exit to permanent housing.
Okay, so the $588,000 related to shelters, but it's going to be spent on rent assistance.
Only about $60,000 will be spent on rent assistance. The rest will be spent on shelter operations. It can also be spent on capital improvement. So we've heard from at least 2 potential warming center sites that they have needs for some capital improvement. This is a great opportunity with these one-time funds to do some long-lasting infrastructure development so that these sites can be used as shelters for the long term.
So we have basically $1 million, and you know, what has brought my attention, you know, we've been through the heat, the extreme heat, and now it could be, we might have some extreme cold, you know, might have some unusual cold weather coming in, and I forward an article to all the commissioners regarding that, and I just want to make sure we're prepared. I do not want to be looking in the rearview mirror. Oh, this caught us by surprise. A harsh weather event should not catch us by surprise, and I want to be fully prepared that we can do this. I really like what's been presented so far. However, I'm concerned about the most urban part of our county. We do not have sites available. I'm just going through the geography, Brenda, that you presented to me today. There's unincorporated areas in urban Clackamas County that may have a larger homeless population, and they may not have access to shelters. So how do we get them in there? Or do we set up a shelter on the fly?
Yeah, shelters on the fly are difficult. I will also say that we have 120 individuals in our motel shelter program right now. So those are folks who may have accessed these warming centers if they were still out on the street. So we have more capacity now. You know, this is really difficult work. We never know how many cold nights we're going to have, really dependent on faith community and community organizations. We did some pre-work this year. We did some listening sessions with community partners to understand, you know, their hesitancy in working with the county. That's one reason why we are requesting some behavioral health supports. You know, after 2 or 3 days in sort of tight confines, you know, you can imagine that the mental health needs may pop up. So trying to be responsive to what we're hearing from the community, but when it comes down to it, unless we want to start really aggressively moving into county-operated, county-owned sites, we're really dependent on the goodwill of our community partners to step in and want to do this work with us.
Do we have any outreach to volunteers to help with this effort?
We sure do. Most of these centers are volunteer-run, and again, this year we've got a new component. The Father's Heart has applied to be a volunteer coordinator for system-wide, so they would train, recruit, deploy volunteers at a number of different sites. So that's a way to keep the costs down and to engage with community members who really want to do this really important work.
Okay, thank you. We have 3 commissioners up. Who was first?
I'll go.
Mark.
Fahid, on the list of organizations that provide warming shelters, what's their capability for outreach, for identifying and finding the most vulnerable people that need to be brought in, and what kind of transportation assets are out there to bring those people into these warming centers?
I know that Commissioner Schill directed the question to me, Brenda, but I think
Brenda, was that a better one for you?
Transportation resources are one piece of the puzzle that we do not have a really good handle on. I'll just say that right up front. And I'm sorry, I forgot the first part of your question.
Well, the other part was, what are their capabilities for
to do outreach?
reaching out and identifying those most vulnerable people on a cold night that need to be brought in to a warming shelter?
Yeah, thank you. So I'll use a couple of the examples. So Malala Hope has been operating for 8 years. It's a relatively small community. They know the community. A lot of it is word of mouth. We work with Public and Government Affairs to make sure that the community is alerted. Usually we have a day or two notice when we know it's going to be really cold. So we start that notice saying, it looks like it's going to be cold. These are the sites that are going to be open. So social media, website, and I think most importantly, just the word of mouth among the houseless population and the trusting relationships that the houseless population have with these providers who have been there year after year, providing them with a cot, a warm meal, and safety during the cold weather.
Mm-hmm. One final question. This provision is for like when it gets down to really cold, like freezing, 33 degrees. I was out in my woods here last weekend working, falling trees. It was cold in the morning, rainy, and probably about 40 degrees maybe. And even in those conditions, one can get hypothermia. And so my concern is, when does a window open for the warming shelters, when it gets down, say, below 40 degrees at night and it's a rainy night?
Yeah. It's long been a hope of mine that Clackamas County would stand up a year-long shelter system, and hopefully with the new Metro dollars, that will be, a vision realized in the next couple of years. But right now, because of our financial constraints, we open the shelters when the forecast, including wind chill, is going to be 33 degrees at some point during the evening. So there's a couple of websites that we go to that will project out hour by hour. So Malala is often open more nights than Oregon City because it's colder out in Malala.
Okay, thanks, Brenda.
Thank you. Commissioner Savas.
I think Commissioner Fisher was ahead of me.
Go ahead, Commissioner Fisher, then.
Oh, okay. So I'm concerned about capacity. I understand that there have sometimes been 200 people in shelter on a night, and when I just do the quick little add up from the memo, I don't see that we have adequate capacity. And is it November 2nd? It's like, oh my gosh. So what is the plan to get to at least a safety net of capacity?
So again, we have the 121 individuals in the motel shelter, so we need to add that. And then, the numbers are pretty low right now, 32 in Malala. They generally have, 10 to 15 individuals spend the night there. Father's Heart, 49-person capacity, generally full every night that they are open. Estacada, huge capacity. We'll see what the fire marshal says. And the Canby site will also have a large capacity. I know less about what Sandy's going to offer. And other than that, it's going to be down to, I think at this point, looking at county sites that we might want to activate if we feel like we need some additional surge capacity.
Okay, and what about emergency vouchers?
Emergency hotel vouchers? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is not something that's currently in our plans.
Is that possible with the additional 588?
It is. That is a possibility. There are some administrative challenges of working with motels, but it's definitely something that, that we can consider, but it's not currently in the plan.
Okay, I'm just concerned there are families sleeping in cars. There are, I think that we just need a continuum.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of support. And then also with the homeless services dollars ramping up, if you identify that family, get them into someplace, even if it's super cold, get them into someplace stable, and we can do some navigation and some outreach, we can then transition those. This is an opportunity. And I would hate to see people not being able to access it. It seems like the pandemic really laid bare the needs of people and what types of services that work for them. And the congregate type of shelter, it's, there are cots that before the pandemic, they would just be all lined up like this, all next to one another, not the most I don't want to say, comfortable, but it's a little bit invasive. It's, people have spoken loudly that is, it's not comfortable, it can feel very challenged. So I really would like us to think through how we are addressing this, because you know what? This problem is not going away. And I think Chair Smith said that we're going to have how many extreme weather events they're forecasting?
I don't know.
Like multiple
Could be a
extreme.
possibility. Let's hope it doesn't happen, but, I just want us to be as prepared as we can be.
Yeah, well, I'm just concerned that
There's
we're-
always going to be
we're not.
people that fall through the cracks, unfortunately, but I just want our staff to know that this is an issue we care about deeply, and it looks like you have responded, and thank you for that. Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, good discussion, and I appreciate staff bringing what they're working on forward. When I raised this about a month ago under issues, this was an anticipated means of at least touching base. Here's what we're working on, and there's a greater work session forthcoming, ahead soon. So great discussion, appreciate all that. And my goal was to figure out what staff was working on and maybe suggest if there were gaps, so I could see gaps, maybe make some suggestions that they work on in preparation for that work session. So one of the gaps I see, and I've mentioned this before, and building on the model that seemed to pause or be stalled off, which was the model which we worked on for the Veterans Village, in the sense, when I say model, I'm talking about the cost being, good bang for the dollar, the management aspect of it, the transition element of it, and also the internal governance of how that works, similar to the Lane County models. So when it comes to the need, I think the need is greater than we have dollars available. And the hotel model is great for those immediate things, but there again, if we can do other things that have more bang for the buck, we're going to help more people, significantly more, multiples more. So that's something I think we really need to look at, because I think all the forecasts, all the experts around the country are forecasting that the homeless population will grow. That's unfortunate. That poverty is growing, that, the American dream is farther out of reach. All that said, I think we need to start developing and talking about a model where we get bang for the buck so we can help more people. If we choose the most expensive models and neglect opportunities that are more affordable, we're not going to be able to help as many people, just a fraction of the people that need the help. So I think we need to think a little bit larger. So my ask is to include something to build off of. And, and I mentioned this before, I'll mention it again, I think we need a facility for people that have addiction issues, right? And those are typically coined, low barrier. But I don't think that people that don't have those issues should be mixed in with those particulars, because I have heard from people directly, they fear for their lives sometimes when they don't have those kinds of problems, and they're in or alongside folks that do. So in kind, there should be one that's more family-oriented, whether it's women and children or families that are more stable, just happen to be houseless. Also the avenue of car camping. A lot of people are investing, frankly, in campers, motorhomes, and everything else, and they're living there because it's far more affordable. So we need some kind of whether it's a parking accommodation or sanitation facilities that are adequate. But we need to think out of the box. And my goal is, those are some of the ideas that I want to be more inclusive. Don't know, I'm sure y'all have a lot to do, and I'm sure there's probably not a lot of staff to help with that, but I want to think broader. And of course, this is not necessarily seasonal, but it's obviously more, obvious, the need's more obvious this time of year as we approach winter. Again, the bang for the buck, if you look at the 30 people that we're housing today, or roughly the capacity up to 30, what is it, Vahid, at the Veterans Village right now, 25 or so?
Yeah, it's 23.
Yeah, 23. We've transitioned people. It's working well. I think that model has had zero impact to the local neighbors in that area. So those are the types of models I think we ought to grow, because we can't duplicate what's going wrong to the north of us. And I don't want to do that, because that will impact our ability to locate facilities. And so I think we need to build off that success and say that we can do responsible sheltering, as affordably as possible with low impacts to the neighborhoods and also to the welfare of people that are, have addictions or don't have addictions. So that was my ad. That was a purpose for this, I think today, is to find out what the gaps are, and those are the gaps I want to speak or see us work on.
Let's just bring that forward, Commissioner Savas.
Great,
Thank
thank
you
you.
very much. I want to thank staff for coming in. Commissioners, we're going to take a brief break before we work on ARPA funding. Thank you very much for coming. We will resume promptly at 11:10, and please observe the professional courtesies so we can continue with this important work. Thank you. Yeah, we do.
My gosh, I'm glad I didn't leave. I had in my brain we were coming back in 10 minutes, but we were coming back in 5 minutes.
It has been 10 minutes.
Thank you very much for doing that. I said 10 after.
Okay. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
Commissioners.
My brain isn't working.
Oh, you're fine.
So Chair Smith, you're going to be really upset, but I'm going to be back in 2 minutes. Sorry.
We're back on break.
Okay, we have 3 commissioners in the room. Thank you very much. We're going to resume our issues and administrator updates. Gary, what's up next?
Thank you, Chair Smith. Next is American Rescue Plan Act funding request. I'll ask Nancy Bush to please.
Wait a minute, what's your problem back there? My microphone's on.
Mine is not. Thank you very much.
No, it was
I
the
love-
microphone.
Thank you to our outstanding videographer team. The gestures they make behind that window are pretty awesome. All right. Yes, thank you, Chair. Next is American Rescue Plan Act funding requests. Nancy Bush, County Operating Officer, will join me. There's a memo in your packet. It is also online. I'll tee this off. So, Commissioners, as you know, Clackamas County will receive $80 million from the United States government for the American Rescue Plan Act funds, which are to help address COVID-related impacts across the nation. We have already received the first installment of these funds, which is $40.6 million. You have already allocated $17.1 million from this first round. This information's in your packet. Up to this point, you have followed my recommendation, which is do not spend any more money until we get final guidance from the United States Treasury, because if we were to misspend money, even with the best-hearted intentions, we'd be liable for repaying those funds to the United States government. 2 weeks ago, though, the United States Treasury has stated the following: the interim guidance that currently is in place, until there is final guidance, the interim guidance is binding and effective, and the Treasury will not charge local governments if we spend the money following the interim guidance. We are not held liable if the final guidance changed from the interim guidance. So that is a game changer. So that has changed. So with that, I do recommend to you as your budget officer, you can go forward and spend more ARPA dollars. And today, if you choose, you can make some decisions on how to spend the $23 million remaining in your first installment of the ARPA dollars. So the memo says what I just told you. There is a spreadsheet in your packet that has all of the pending requests of how you could spend ARPA dollars. Some of this is from internal departments. Some of these are from external organizations who have asked you for funds. As you can see from the spreadsheet, there are $114 million worth of requests suggested of how you could spend your only $80 million worth of ARPA dollars. So clearly you can't spend every request that's been offered to you. So with that, I'll stop talking and ask Nancy, would you like to add to anything I've said so far?
No, thank you. I'm Nancy Bush. I'm the County Operations Officer, so thank you. Yes, so the committee has been meeting and been, talking about how we want to move forward, and we've been, of course, waiting to see how the commissioners want to start spending the rest of the dollars that we have. So we're just open for questions and comments today, and I'm happy to help out where I can.
Thank you, Nancy. There's a couple items on this list I think they have decided not to go forward with. I know of one, and I have some questions about the others. The $1 million purchase at the fairgrounds for property across the street, I believe the Fair Board has taken that off for now, based on the joint meeting that we had several weeks ago. Commissioners, they are now looking at a lease situation on that, a possible lease situation. And there might be additional state grants for county fairs for capital improvements. Another one on CCOM, Gary, evacuation trailer. Now, the Department of Emergency Management, we approved through consent agenda the purchase of a couple trailers. Is this the same? This is CCOM.
I actually do know the answer to that. No, they're not. The trailers that disaster management are purchasing are for sheltering. So they're not evacuation trailers for CCOM.
And so this is for, not for equipment and that type of stuff at CCOM?
So from my understanding, it would be, so like whenever they had to evacuate, whenever we had the fires, so they didn't have a trailer to put their equipment in.
Right.
And it probably will have some equipment in it that they would be able to move very quickly.
All right. So, Commissioners, I see there's some cards up. Not everything on this list, obviously, is going to be funded. I have some recommendations in front of me from staff and myself, but I see two cards up. I'm not sure who was first. Paul, were you first?
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
I think I am this time. So at the very, I think, and I'll be asking Everett for this if ever happens to be listening, and that is all the different dates that we were told we would get the final guidance, which is no fault of anyone in this room, but we just haven't received that. And Gary accurately stated 2 weeks ago that we basically got, with this particular guidance, we've got really a free pass out of jail, so to speak, if there's no clawback, as long as we follow the guidance. I want to say that, as long as we follow the guidance.
Correct.
So as I read, Nancy, in this, items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 identify what's clearly eligible, which is, spelled out in the packet here. Investments in broadband, water and sewer, premium payment for essential employees, replacing public sector revenue loss, addressing negative economic impacts, supporting, all under COVID, basically, COVID-related, with the exception of water and sewer and broadband. So with that said, and this basically, there's no clawback thing we just told with 2 weeks, we've got basically some opportunity that assures that. So we're going to take advantage of that, and I think that's the goal. So what we identified was last week when Commissioner Schrader and I made our presentation as far as the Housing Supportive Services LIP was, now that we've got this provision that from 2 weeks ago, we can actually leverage this opportunity. So essentially, that ask would go towards sheltering folks, basically that were under the CARES Act, not the CARES Act, but under the FEMA.
Yes.
Yeah, the original FEMA funding during the COVID and the forest fires and all of that. So that's clearly eligible, and that will free up about $2-something million and move our LIP from the 12 million to 14.2, I believe. So I want to get that, and that's clearly identified as, under item number 1, for example. So that's clearly an addressable one. The part that I have a question, Nancy, and that is, with all the other asks we've been receiving, and knowing that we're putting ourselves at risk, and I don't want to put the general fund at risk because we can't afford the clawback, but under the 4 bulleted items, it'd be nice to know, frankly, on this spreadsheet, of those 4 bulleted items there, I'm going to read at least the first one: health disparities and social determinants of health through community health workers, lead remediation, and violence intervention programs, for example.
Hey,
It'd be-
Paul, where are you, what spreadsheet?
I'm
are
on
you
page
looking at?
2. I'm on page 2.
Of the
Page 2 of the packet.
Of the memo.
memo.
That's online.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, okay.
Well, we
Page
also
2.
have, I think, Sonia, you
have it.
have one of these too.
I have it printed
No.
out. I have
Do
it
I?
printed.
Oh,
So
Yeah.
page 2, are you talking
Oh,
about the
okay,
bulleted
sorry,
ones,
I just
Paul, or
wanted
the
to make-
numbered ones?
The dot points.
Yeah.
Are you talking about, excuse me, the bulleted ones? or the-
Page 2 of the memo. So the very top of the page, it looks like this with the county logo, right? That's page 1. Says memorandums.
on
It's
page
like a work session type of page. And then page 2, it starts out in bold print. It says to
Right.
date, okay?
now where are you referring to?
So I went from the numbered items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, where I just spoke to, and I'm down to the next paragraph.
Okay, there you go.
And in that one paragraph, you'll see 4 bulleted items. And it says encouraged, under that, it says encourage eligible uses under the hardest hit criteria include. So what I'm asking or suggesting at some point is know under the spreadsheet down below where all those asks are, it looks like this, folks. See that? It'd be nice to know which of these qualify, okay?
Yeah.
Under those particular bullets, and that'd be nice to know, because I think there's been this, I won't say a misunderstanding, maybe we don't all understand, maybe no, because we don't have guidance, we don't clearly understand what is really truly eligible. I think people think it's money for anything and everything, and it's
Right.
not.
Yeah. So thank you. That's a really good point. So one of the things on the spreadsheet, I just want to make clear, there are things on here that would not be eligible. We are trying to be very transparent with you as well as the public and say, this is what we've gotten in. So, and in all fairness, when you see the encouraged eligible uses, that is not all, the only eligible uses. There was a question that the commissioners had regarding, what that statement means, so that's why we put it in here. But yes, to your point, we need to, it would be good to separate these out. It's like, these are things that we think are eligible. These are things that are not, or that we discourage, as a group that we discourage. So, yeah, that's fair.
Right,
So-
and that's where I'm at a little bit of a handicap in not knowing
Yeah.
today anyhow.
We're with you, Paul. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know what's eligible or what isn't eligible on the spreadsheet.
Right, we just don't know. It's not
I'm
identified.
assuming the non-congregate housing / sheltering at 2.234 is the money that we would use to replace to get the LIP up to 14 million.
And that was an ask that 2 commissioners brought last week.
Yeah, yeah.
If you want, I can entertain a motion to pass that now.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Savas has moved to appropriate
Yes, I know.
$2.234, $455 million to HCS for non-congregate housing and sheltering, and it has been seconded by Commissioner Schrader. Any further discussion?
The only thing I would like to add and make sure that Commissioner Fisher's aware of this, and I know Commissioner Schrader is that money that becomes freed up of the dollars will go towards outreach and the navigation thing, so that we're covering all aspects of the LIP. Are we all comfortable and knowledgeable of that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's been my ask from the beginning, is to make sure that we were covering all aspects of the local implementation plan, which has been the concern of the oversight committee that I have been part of, wanting to make sure that the board is aware. Appreciate this effort that you guys, that Commissioner Schrader and Commissioner Savas have taken to get us to this place. Also, I want to make sure that everyone knows that the last oversight committee meeting, there was a report that let the oversight committee know that this was likely to happen, and also that we will have a supplemental budget to go along with this. And I do know, my conversations with Jill Smith and with Gary Schmidt and with Rod Cook, there is a recommendation, if this has changed, let me know, but a recommendation that even if we don't have the full funding available right now, that we do a supplemental budget for the local implementation plan of $24 million. And I don't know if we need anyone else to speak
Well,
to that,
we're-
because Jill's not here to talk about it. but-
Look, folks, I want you to get focused on what the motion on the table is. We approve this 2.2 vote now. or we don't approve it, and time for that debate is later. Commissioner Fisher, you have your card up, Commissioner Schrader.
I wasn't finished. Well, we have a motion on the floor.
We have a motion on the floor, as I said.
Okay.
You know, we can keep beating a dead horse every time we get, I feel like Commissioners, honestly, I feel like I'm in a do loop. We're here to look how we're going to spend the ARPA funding, not debate the intricacies of every single policy that we come up. You have had this list in front of you. I think everybody at this table knows what they want to do and they don't want to do. So if we can be focused on our task at hand, I would really, really appreciate that. We have a motion on the table. Okay. Please call the poll.
Commissioner Fisher?
Aye.
Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
Commissioner Schrader?
Aye.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Chair Smith?
Aye, motion passes 5-0. Nancy?
Yes, ma'am.
That we are at $23,481,961. We just spent that much. We are at $21,247,506,000. I suggest we take the next motion is the lost revenue due to every single department in the county who did not experience through the COVID pandemic, the allocations that was given to our two larger counties, and they were able to keep hold of their departments where we haven't. So I'm going to make a request to Nancy. There's a lost revenue within the guidelines for ARPA funding.
Yes. it
Okay,
is.
thank you very much. With that in mind, I'm going to move that we approve the $12,323,657,000 in lost revenue.
Second.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Savas. You have your card up.
I'll hold till after the motions.
Okay, Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, I have a process concern, and so from this point forward, I don't think I can support any ARPA. I talked to Gary about this, or previously. This spreadsheet doesn't really give us any information at all about what is being asked for, what is the need. And when we're talking about lost revenue, and I was talking to Gary yesterday, I said, have we been able to absorb it? What is the consequence? Did we have other money that we didn't spend that helped buffer the lost revenue? And his answer was yes, 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 yes. So I don't think at this moment, it's almost like we need to have information based on what the reality is of what we're doing here. This is one-time money related to COVID to help us in our recovery. If we have been able to absorb this lost revenue because we haven't spent elsewhere, by golly, we have so many other needs out there that we need to be thoughtful in evaluating. So I would suggest that we spend this time really figuring out what our criteria is for decision-making. I love the frame that we're provided for with staff, but we don't have the information to tie what is on this spreadsheet with what this criteria is.
Well, I disagree with that, Commissioner Fisher. I think this board has had this information in front of them for a very long time. You could have reached out and got the information that you needed. I'm sorry you're not able to make a decision today, although I think there are commissioners in the room that can make a decision. For instance, of the $12 million in this request, there are some departments depending on that for projects that this board has approved of. For instance, in H3S, Gary, H3S, part of this, 1.3 million goes to H3S, correct?
That's correct, yes.
That additional 1.3 million in lost revenue, I would submit to you, Commissioner Fisher, can be used for the homeless programs that you advocate for every single time.
Well, I would just like to know that. We don't have this, where was the memo?
Okay.
Gary, I will ask Gary to respond because Chair Smith, you are the chair. You get more information. I'm just telling you that I don't have this information.
You should have
And I
asked
did-
for it. It's been
No,
there.
trust me. I reached out last week,
Well, it's
and
kind
I
of,
did not get the information.
Gary, could you speak to that, please?
All right, so Commissioner Fisher's feedback is valid. We absolutely can provide a lot more detail on every single one of these requests, so I accept that feedback, and we can absolutely do that. And we can have a narrative, and we can add what the 4 bullets Commissioner Savas asked for previously. We can list what is eligible and what's not. We definitely can do much more analysis for you. So I accept that feedback, and we can do that. I'm sorry it wasn't done for today, because we just didn't have the time. I'm sorry. So we can absolutely do that. Yes, Commissioner Fisher, you and I talked about the lost revenue yesterday. My comment, I will say this, I'll paraphrase what I said yesterday. We did not break the bank last year with this lost revenue. We were able to still maintain services. It did have an impact, though, and it meant there were some things we were not able to do because of that lost revenue. I'll use another example, transportation and development. The transportation and maintenance facility building, as you know, the costs have gone up. That would have normally been covered by the road fund, but it couldn't because of the lost revenue. But with these lost revenue funds, this is an option where we could now use that lost revenue to cover what we would have done normally for that transportation maintenance facility, and I think in many other cases with these other departments.
And I believe that when Dan Johnson came forward to help us figure out how to move forward, in his presentation last spring, he said, ARPA dollars is something that we can use if the board approves that transportation funding going forward on that. I see 2 commissioners' cards up. I'm sorry, I don't know who's in the queue first.
Mark, why don't you go ahead?
Thank you. I support approving this motion because that's $12 million that goes back to the general fund, which is 1/12 of the general fund for this fiscal year. That's a significant amount of money, and it gives us some flexibility to take care of our needs now, and also provide I hope, some money at the end of the fiscal year when we need it most for last-minute issues. Thank you.
Commissioner Salas, you have your card up?
Yeah, you know, I guess I want to apologize for my level of understanding and maybe my level of detail that I understand that. But if you go to the bottom of the page in the packet, see the blue page with the spreadsheet, go all the way to the bottom, that $12 million is spelled out.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Okay? So unless someone here is challenging the numbers or challenging our staff, which I don't have any reason to, it's there. And I just to correct, I think Commissioner Scholl he was well-intended, but I just want to just clarify, that's actually not all general fund. So you have, it's spelled out there, the 1.7 to CCSO, 166,000 to the county fair, NCPRD, 3,200,000, by the way, which is really hurting, by the way, that department's not, or not department, that district's not doing so well. BCS, 600,000, it's all spelled out there. The one that I'm a little puzzled by is tourism. I know they took a big hit. I guess they are eligible, but, you know, I mean, hopefully those dollars can be used wisely. But anyhow, Wes, you know, another district, H3S, as Chair Smith pointed out, 1.2, the law library. So those are spelled out. And that was explained to me. I saw it in the packet. I found it, so I don't know what the mystery is, unless, again, you're challenging the veracity of those numbers.
Yeah, so may I respond, Chair Smith?
Yes.
I don't challenge the veracity of our staff's work, absolutely, really respect that. But I am challenging an explanation, we don't have an explanation as to where did the lost revenue come from? And then what was not spent at the same time? And I just know that quite a bit of this, like with tourism, they let go of their staff. Yes, they lost revenue, but they also really cut back operations. Where else with NCPRD did we cut back operations and didn't need that many? I don't know what that revenue would have gone for and what we are missing and what we need for recovery. This money is for recovery. If we're able to tighten our belts in a time of distress, that is good. Maybe we should be looking at bonuses for our amazing staff that's able to tighten their belts in times of need. But this money goes towards recovery, and I do not have enough information from this list. Yeah, we lost revenue, but what do we do on the expenditure side?
So, Commissioner Fisher, with the chair's permission, I'd just like to address that. If that's the level of detail you want for those particular ones, and that's a level of detail that you would probably want, we would all want for all of these, right? I'm concerned about that window of opportunity closing, in which that clawback provision, that from the guides we just got 2 weeks ago, closes before we get all that level of detail that apparently you're asking for currently. There's a lot of ask here, and I would ask those hard questions on each of one of those if that's how deep you want to go. But I know that typically this board doesn't want to go that deep. So I'm surprised, appreciate that you want to go deep, but I mean, that's unusual.
Yeah, I just want us to use the money for recovery, and
Well,
from my
that's what
conversation
this
with-
is.
From my conversation with Gary, I know, and I don't know what percentage of that was absorbed, maybe our finance staff does, but we have a lot of needs here on the table. So I'm looking to Gary to help fill in the blanks.
We definitely can provide this data for you, and we can provide all this data for you. It will take us some time, but we'll get it together as quickly as we can. You didn't ask, but I'll tell you, I do support the lost revenue because we had to curtail services that we provided in order to live within our means. this
And
will
you've been
help.
talking about that consistently ever since we were awarded the ARPA dollars. Commissioner Schrader is going to speak next, but I have a quick question. Gary, does this board normally go into each department's expenditures and tell them how to spend their money?
Only at
No.
only at the budget time when you approve the budgets.
Okay, and for doing that now, I think it's probably out of our realm to do. We don't normally do that. We had a whole array of grant requests come up today that was signified, but we don't tell them exactly that's going to be spent on widgets or paper or personnel. We assume that it's going to go to these programs. I think, it behooves us all on these departments. If we don't understand the functions of these departments, then that's up to each commissioner to learn them. Commissioner Schrader, your card's up.
So, Gary, how long would it take you to give us some more additional information about the 12 million? Because I'm going to make a suggestion here. Because we all know we have, particularly from the nonprofit community, that's pretty much been politicizing a lot of things and really trying to reframe optics in a way that's been very disappointing and wearisome. So for us to move ahead with this, I would like to get the specifics so we can justify, because I'll be honest with you, if we move ahead with this right now, without those details, we'll just get more of this kind of stuff coming at us because, for instance, the Safe Kids Coalition, they want $8 million, but I don't know what they're going to use it for.
We don't have $8 million in this budget.
But I think they're going to see it as a money grab.
Well-
And they'll be very, very upset. And I'm okay with them being upset. So if we're going to move forward, I'm glad to move forward based on what, Gary's recommendation is. But I just want to mention that there will be a lot of blowback with this because a lot of those folks are feeling entitled.
Well, I know they feel entitled, but I'm going to say right now, we could spend the $80 million, all of our $80 million for those nonprofits, and they still would not be satisfied. I'm going to tell you that right now.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm mentioning it now.
The
because I think we
influence of the
better
nonprofits
talk it
on
to-
another issue, I reject the assumption that it's going to influence our spending decisions on ARPA monies, where we need to look at the total of everything in the county.
I just want to make sure that we have a narrative that shows what this money is going for under that umbrella. That would be helpful. So when we get the blowback, and we will, that we have that ready. That's all I'm saying.
Commissioner Savas?
If you just indulge me, excuse me, we got shorted from
okay.
CARES Act funding.
That's
right?
true.
And
Yep.
this money, am I correct?
You're correct.
This money here would have been covered by CARES Act had we done that. So my other question is, it's too late for reimbursement on CARES Act, or is there still a window?
So actually, the CARES Act did not cover this, but where we are shorted on the CARES Act is our neighboring counties got, between the three jurisdictions, like $250 million. We got 17. So they did have the opportunity to do some of this stuff, and they weren't as short as we're coming up, I don't think, per capita. But they got so much more money up front. We have always been lagging behind, and we still are. And
And
this,
I
and
need
this
to-
80 million is not going to catch
And
us up.
clarify, this just goes to the end of 2020. This is not
That
lost
is
revenue
correct.
for the year of 2021, which we're currently in.
That is correct. It goes through December of
So
2020.
the number could be a lot larger, which
It
we
could
would
be.
not have to backfill that number, but I do think that we need to do something for our departments. I think that is one of our, we were able to do the premium pay for our employees. I look at this the same way, to keep our government healthy, financially healthy, and moving forward on the programs that we tell them to do. This board is really, really good about giving our staff direction, oh, you go out and do this, and you go out and do that, without the means to do so. And I will remind you, we voted to go ahead with the transportation maintenance facility plan.
We did.
And that presentation from the department head says, yes, I can use some of my reserves, I think it was, providing I'm able to recapture some of my lost revenue. And every single person at this table says, oh, we got to be fiscally responsible, and we can't run a deficit situation, but then when it comes time to do that, I'm hearing nothing but pushback. Paul, your card's up.
Yeah, so anyhow, finishing my thoughts, my point is that understanding what's getting backfilled internally and all those dynamics are something that we don't endeavor into. Gary and his, and department directors and staff are working on making that happen. But it's strapped us, I know, we're hearing that the impact, the financial impacts, and you all know, I'm detail oriented, but I'm not a micromanager, but I can understand financially how tough that this has been. And I can see some of this, some of these, what I've read off here are in financial straits. So it's real. And we have a duty as the board of directors for whether they're districts or whether these are departments to fill those needs and those shortfalls. But the point is, my question is, how much money's left over after we make this decision today? If this passes, there's still money's left over. It's not as though we're out of money, right? So we can still do the prioritization. So how much money will be left over when we're done?
About 8 million.
About 8,
So,
yes.
I'm sorry,
Sure.
yes. If
About
we
eight,
get our
nine.
math right, we're between 8 and 9
Make a
million, just
suggestion.
from the first installment.
What was that?
Between 8 and 9 million from the first installment.
And we're not going to spend it all, we're not going to spend, we're going to leave a buffer, commissioners, of at least 2 million on this first 40 million that we've been allocated for. So if we want to just approve this today and move forward, and we can revisit the rest later, go ahead, Martha.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, why don't we just give staff time to get us the particulars for a narrative, and then just come back to it as soon as we can, like next week, Gary? What would you say? I mean, what's your,
Staff can come back with detail narrative on every single request.
Okay.
And Nancy, just how much time would you think staff needs? Be realistic. I don't want to.
I think, look, there is one on the table. Please be courteous to the person talking. Nancy, you were asked a question.
So I would think probably would take a couple weeks, maybe.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's going to take, and
It's going to take some time to get a lot of detail on these.
Can I just, since I'm the one mostly asking the question, I'm looking at what's the source of revenue for CCSO that was lost? I mean, what's the source of it? I don't know. And the big one is NCPRD, $3 million. They get a lot of fees. They charge fees for activities. They didn't produce the activities. Did they lay off staff? I mean, where's the source of the revenue that was lost?
Elizabeth, you have some answers. Is that why you're moving up?
Okay.
I mean, we probably don't need $12 million in lost revenue.
Oh, I would totally disagree with that, Commissioner Fisher. I think you're being really disingenuous on your approach to this.
I don't have enough information, Chair Smith.
Yeah, well, you know what? You're going to get all the information in the world, and I predict you're going to continue to vote against it because you would
No,
like
not necessarily.
this to go to the nonprofits for supportive housing. We are not in the position
No.
to do that.
I'm not.
Elizabeth Comfort?
Good morning. Yes, I was going to pull up lost revenue, see if I could get some categories. Is that what would you like?
Yes, go
Can you
ahead. You came
provide-
forward for that reason.
Fines and, this is for our sheriff's office. I have here categories of fines and forfeitures, pardon me, and some rents, and the other are miscellaneous. So fines and forfeitures is $92,000 for rents, $367,000 for miscellaneous other revenue. Let's see, and some user charges and fees that they were not able to collect due to not being out on the service, providing their normal sheriff service. And I would have to defer more details requesting. Apologize for the vagueness.
So I suggest, Chair, if you want to take 40 minutes to do this right now, we could. Otherwise, this is all following the federal guidance of how to calculate lost revenue. Every department listed here did that. We have the worksheets. We can email them to you all, right?
Okay, well, that's great.
So why don't we just do that? Email it to the board.
I'm going to recommend, Gary, that we continue with this motion. You can vote up, you can vote down, but remember your vote's going to send a very strong message to our departments and our employees on how much we value what they do. So I suggest we go ahead and do this, and with an email forthcoming on exactly how this is being spent.
So, Chair Smith, I'm really interested in understanding what the impact was on the lost revenue and how them receiving the money pushes us towards recovery. How does that help us recover through this pandemic?
Most of our costs are staffing and employees, and we did our best. I think we did a damn good job at keeping everyone employed.
Yeah.
When we weren't putting out a lot of services. So there's an impact, right? We paid those payroll. We made payroll.
Yeah, so that's the kind of information, Paul.
Well,
Well, I think that's obvious, Commissioner Fisher.
No,
We've heard that
it's
time
not
and
obvious
again.
Because they also laid off most of tourism. So
Because that was
it's
a very
not-
separate funding source.
It's not obvious. It's not obvious by a list with numbers. It's just not obvious.
Okay, I'm sorry that you have problem with numbers, Commissioner Fisher.
No, Chair Smith, that is not acceptable.
It sure is,
That's-
because
and
you're having,
that's
you've said
insulting.
that.
It's insulting. I'm not going to take it right now.
Well, too
You
bad.
do not need to degrade your commissioners. I'm looking out for the welfare of the people of Clackamas County to help us towards recovery. And it is our duty to ask the questions and stop being a bully and belittling your commissioners.
I'm going to
It's
call for the
not
vote.
okay.
I'm going to call for the vote. Shannon, take the poll.
Commissioner Schrader? Oh, Commissioner Scholl?
Aye.
Commissioner Fisher?
No.
Commissioner Savas?
Aye.
Chair Smith?
Aye, motion passes 4-1. I'm going to recommend that we take a recess for about 2 minutes. And Gary, let's regroup.
Okay, yep.
Okay, we are back. Technical staff, you're good. Okay. This is what Gary and I have decided to recommend. We're going to pause on the rest of the ARPA dollar expenditures. We will revisit that list on November 23rd to give staff time to answer any questions and to really take off this list what's not eligible. I would suggest in the meantime, if any commissioner has a request on something that they want to do, they let Nancy know as she's putting the list together. Come prepared to make your case. We can move forward with that. We have 2 items left today, Gary.
Yes, on the issues list, we have Here Together supportive housing letter, and Commissioner Schrader wanted to do a housing update, and Commissioner Communications. Those are 3 items left.
Okay, Gary, what's up next? Commissioner Schrader, we're going to pause on the ARPA funding and revisit it on November 23rd.
Okay, because we still have some money left, right?
Yes, you do.
We have 8 million of the first go-around.
And I did just talk to staff, they're gonna get us a whole list with details, but,
Elizabeth already sent it.
okay, she did, so. But we
Okay.
can even ask more, so we'll be okay.
Yeah, we can ask more. Yes. Gary, what's up next?
All right, I'm jumping ahead here. Here Together Supportive Housing Letter. There was an attachment in your packet. Commissioner Fisher asked to discuss this.
Okay. Yeah, I first wanted to make sure everybody saw it, and so when it came through to me, I forwarded it on to ask that we talk about it. I would like us to have a response. I think our actions today say that we are implementing all aspects of our local implementation plan, and we should respond to all parts of the letter. And just wanted to see what people thought, and if we could get support to work with, probably Emily is our key policy advisor, and I'm happy to work with her since I've been tracking this, and to come up with a response so that we can assure our community that we are dedicated to the homeless services measure, that we are implementing the plan, and that we are moving forward as funding becomes available.
Why wouldn't we move forward as funding becomes available, I think is the question. I think there's some assumptions out there that we're not going to fund this. I'm going to say again that as the Metro funds, the tax revenues come in and are given to us, they are immediately out the door to be spent on what they're intended to spend on. I have some issues with this letter going forward, but we have a couple of commissioners with their cards up. Commissioner Scholl.
Yeah, we have taken many pains to struggle through our funding that's available and bounce that off the need that's out there. And I think we've been as responsible as any board could be. We have taken some loans. We've used ARPA dollars. We've passed tens of millions of dollars of grants that pass through this board. And I don't see what more we can do. We can't print money like the feds can. I think we've done everything we can to support our people who need this supportive housing. I don't know what more we can do with the funds we have.
Thank you. Commissioner Salas.
Yeah, well, just want to, there's a lot of folks that we know that did not sign this letter that were approached, and a number of these folks got different material than what's in the letter today. That was either posted on their pages or their links to their website and so forth. And some of those folks have called myself, called Commissioner Schrader, I'm sure called the rest of you, I don't know. When I read some of the material they were referencing, I said, well, that's unfortunate. That's not quite accurate. And so there's been, I think, some misunderstandings that have led to some misinformation. I want to applaud those who did reach out to us for clarification in determining whether or not they would sign this letter. I thought that was a responsible thing to do. I typically don't put my signature on something until I do my research on it. So I want to thank the folks that did reach out, whether they signed it or didn't sign it, but the fact that they reached out, I think that's the responsible thing to do. I have some other thoughts about this, but I'm not going to belabor it. But I'm not sure that if maybe the messaging we need to continue to do or ramp up, which I spoke to Gary about yesterday, should be more on the things that we are doing. And I don't think that we've done the best job thus far on trying and working with this cross-departmental effort with our Administrator Housing Task Force on the messaging piece, which I know we're going to be talking about Thursday, so we'll be talking about that. But we need to get the messaging out of what we are doing, because I think some people misinterpreted a number of things that we had spent. We only spent $1.7 million, or we're only spending 1.7, or we're not living up to this, or we're not living up to that, when we clearly identified, once we were made aware that the funding wasn't coming, and it wasn't coming at the date it was intended to come, that we've done everything we can to ramp that up. And so as opposed to talking about the good things we're doing, I think people were messaging that we're not doing It's all about what we're not doing. So I'm hoping that maybe we could all work together, whether it's here or there, but we can work together somehow, cooperatively, towards solving this problem and trying to, or not trying, let's just say let's just say it's an unintended consequence of people being misinformed that led to misinformation that is, I think what's resulted in this. It's a little frustrating, I think, for all of our staff. I know that some of our staff are pretty distraught at times about some of the criticisms that they don't deserve. I know that's been targeted towards the BCC to some degree. I get that, but that's our job. We take those hits. But I think we need to be mindful. We need to keep everyone in good spirits and the morale here at this county, and that we are doing the good work. But we need to get the message out of the good work that we're doing, and I think we can do a better job of that. That's all I have.
I'm not sure exactly what type of letter you think that we need to say on this, but there's a couple of Oregon City commissioners who signed this letter, but at the same time, the city of Oregon City denied Father's Heart a conditional use application where they're able to provide how many beds, Gary? 49, 69? You know, what's with that? Talk about being two-faced and disingenuous. I think that's horrid. Also, I'm going to say I have a lot of problem with Here Together and these nonprofits pressing us and pressing us and pressing us to spend money, telling us how to spend the money when they are the recipients of the money. Anytime you set up a process where people making decisions about how money gets spent, they're also the beneficiaries, it is flawed. And I'm quoting an article written October 6th from Willamette Week by Nigel Jackwis. I happen to agree wholeheartedly with many of the interviewees in this, and I'm going to read them. There has been defense of how this money was spent in another county, but it's the same in this county. These I don't see any new nonprofit that was formed in Clackamas County that is all of a sudden going to be the recipient of this money. As a matter of fact, all the nonprofits who have their hands out, who are criticizing us, are the recipients of the money, and they're already in business doing other things. In public work, you have to be careful, or you end up with appearance of impropriety. If it doesn't smell right, it's not appropriate. And when you're handing out a good deal of public money, you have to avoid an area of conflict. And I'm going to submit that the organization Here Together was formed as a political action committee who put together a ballot measure, raised funds, bought advertising, and engaged in a political campaign to get this passed. They still have money in their coffers. They intend on engaging in political campaigns again for certain people running for office. They have threatened at least one, if not two, of my board of commissioners that if they don't play right, they're going to file somebody against them and fund that opposition. How can Here Together even think that they're going to tell us to go out and borrow money that we don't have? Again, the nonprofits are recommending how the money should be spent are the groups that will get the money. I want to call for an outside ethics investigation of Here Together and some of the signers on this letter, because frankly, I have had it. I've had enough of my county being maligned, being lied about, having our staff lied about, having our commissioners lied about. And Gary, you're going to proceed with that. And we're going to figure this out. And if they want to go after us, if I'm the only person on this commission that does it, I will stand up to the plate and I will start swinging, because I cannot tolerate this any longer. It wasn't that long ago that our general fund was totally upside down. And if it hadn't been to the good work of the past board and our administrator and all the staff to roll up their sleeves and figure out how to keep our budget solvent, we wouldn't even be in the position of giving $2.3 million of our ARPA dollars to backfill some of these services.
So, Chair, it's okay if I make a few comments?
Yes, you may.
All right, okay. So, in these situations, I've learned that sometimes no response is the best response. And here's why I say that. We're doing what we're doing. We're implementing the program. We've worked very hard internally, working with our chief financial officer to get a sense of, and people are saying we haven't been transparent. Well, we have been, because we've been pretty upfront that what we've been doing is looking at the trends and how the money's coming in and trying to build to the trend of the money coming in. And that's about all we can do at this point. And we are doing the backfill now. And I don't particularly feel pressured by these folks because, you know, they mean well, I know that. But listen, you can't bully me, you can't guilt me. I mean, I've been tried before, and as far as guilt, I always remind people I went to Catholic school and I was taught by Italian nuns, so you can't get more guilted than that, okay? Really? Okay. So I just want to quietly keep doing what we're doing to implement. This does strike me as a campaign. I've been trying to talk to some of our fellow electeds to give them a clearer picture of what the trends are in the finances. And I'll be honest with all of you, I had a bad feeling about this from the get-go because it was externally motivated. When I look at Here Together's website, there's a heck of a lot about Portland. And I knew that in this county, that was going to be a real problem, okay? Because people were going to see it, whether it was true or not, that somehow we're paying for their policies, okay? That isn't true. We are getting some money, but the perception is the reality. So at the time, I predicted that it wouldn't pass in our county, and it didn't. But we're going to implement it anyway, and I've always said this because I do think it's the right thing to do. But the groups need to give us the space to do it in a fiscally responsible way. And I have to tell you right now, the trend is not looking good. We've only gotten like $700,000. So we can put in our budget, if you want, to put it as a contingency for $24 million. But when these folks are telling me, I think the one that really struck me, well, this was the October 8th one. I got the letter before they sent out the official one, I guess. I don't know how that happened, but I got it. And what I looked at here, which I just thought, come on, guys. Metro, Eco Northwest are clear and should form the basis of the year one budgets. I have to tell you guys, I'm not the numbers person, but Elizabeth is and Paul is. And heck, I don't trust their projections. So that's the biggest issue for me. It's not the heart of what people want to do and how they do it, but when they say things like this and that's not like following through, I've got a serious problem with that. And they're telling us 24 million is a reasonable balance between fiscally conservative work. Not in this county, it's not. I'm sorry, it just doesn't, it's not. If you've seen one county, you've seen one county. And then the other thing that I've been concerned about is that when you look at every week, when you look at our human services budget, we are funneling a heck of a lot for homeless services, for all those kinds of things. Granted, they're pass-through money, and maybe there's some more, general fund money we can maybe put towards that. But it's not as if we've been doing nothing. And so I have found that somewhat troubling as well, and actually somewhat unreasonable. And I'm convinced if we want to make our projections public about what's really happening with the revenue stream, it's out there, it's all public. And I almost think some of the business people would have been upset to know that this is kind of happening, you know? But we don't need to campaign on the backs of poor people. And I don't want to respond to this because it just strikes me, it just makes me sad. And there's, you know, I'm just going to keep doing what we're doing and try and implement to to what we can afford at this point. And if people try and pressure and guilt, well, get in line. That's kind of how I feel about it. So that's my take. So with all due respect, Commissioner Fisher, they've got to trust us to do what we're doing, and if they don't, they won't, and that's it. And if we're going to get tomatoes thrown at it, so what? I'm willing to take it. It doesn't upset me. Makes me feel sad because of all the years that we've done this stuff. But so anyway, that's my take on it. And you know, people, I don't know. I think it's mostly because they just don't like our board too. I think that's part of it.
They just don't like?
They just don't like our board very much. So they're kind of seeing us as an easy target. And I can't make people like us or dislike, I mean, I don't know. So I just say, we got it, we got the 2.3 million, let's just let it go. And then what I would suggest with the money that we just gave to our departments, I think we should do a check-in to see how much of that is going to be going towards these kinds of services. And I would expect H3S to have a significant piece of this. I also expect with the folks from the Parks District, we have a library to build. We've got a Milwaukee Bay Park. We just need to roll out some of those details as well, so people are clear about what we're spending our money on and why we are backing our departments. And remember how much more is coming, Gary? Another 40 million?
40 million next May, right?
Okay, so so to all the other folks who keep asking, it ain't over yet. Ain't over till the fat lady sings. So we'll have another time to go ahead. And now if we restore what we're supposed to be doing as a county, we'll have another chance to go back and take a look at some of these asks. I will tell you, one of the nonprofits that signed this, who I love, and I've worked with for years, they just found out that they're having an $800,000 deficit for a program that's a brilliant program because the state cut the funding. And I'm kind of like, guys, well, what do you want us to prioritize? You want us to do the homeless, or is it your particular, I mean, I don't know what to say. If we can't do both, we can't do both. Now, I'd be willing to put ARPA dollars towards that program, but I don't know if the rest of you would. But it's kind of like, there's no magic money tree out there. So that was depressing to me, quite frankly, too, when I had to deal with that, so.
And I appreciate your comments on that, Commissioner Schrader.
So anyway.
And I think the question we need to ask is, it's this board's responsibility to fund all these nonprofits out there that are running deficits.
They do worthy work. I mean, you know.
That's not the question. Of course they do worthy work. Of course there's a million ideas that come across the table that is worthy of funding, but is it within our scope and budget to fund all of those? That's the question I want to put forward to you. I'm not sure who had the card up next. I'm sorry.
Well, I just want to say about the nonprofits, remember, their focus is that social service work. That is their priority. That is where their heart is, and they're going to advocate as hard as they can for what they see as doing the good work that they do. I don't blame them for that at all, but I just want to say there's got to be they got to understand it's not ARPA money as well, that most of the people across the nation, quite frankly, are putting ARPA dollars towards construction and infrastructure because this is one-time money. And that's the other thing that our groups, our nonprofits who do all this good work should know, is that, like, this is one-time dollars, guys. And I went to NACO twice, and I have to tell you, most of the counties are looking at things like broadband and infrastructure stuff. You know, so we're trying to balance both, okay? So I'm not going to throw stones at them. I think that they're just worried, they're upset, state money dried up. I mean, what can you do? So anyway, let's have peace in our time, will we? So. Okay, I'm done.
Commissioner,
And that takes my housing.
I'm not
costs,
sure,
too.
Paul or Sonia, who had, Commissioner Fisher, go.
Thanks. So Commissioner Savas and Commissioner Schrader, the information, I did not receive information from other businesses that weren't signing on. If you could share that with me, I'd really
What's that?
appreciate it.
I'm not sure.
You received other
No,
information?
I just
From
said-
other folks
I would
that were
just-
concerned about
No,
this?
I got phone calls.
Okay, if you could just let me know, I would appreciate.
Well, I think that's a two-way street, Commissioner Fisher.
Sure.
Your name comes up often.
Okay, well, let's
So
talk.
it's apparently you've already talked to him.
Who are you we talking about? Okay, well, we'll talk offline. But what I would like to do, there are some things here that I don't know the answer to that were brought to my attention. When it says under immediate actions, distribute newly awarded contracts, I'm not sure what they're referring to and what that's about. And then the other one that I'm really concerned about that I don't know, so I want to get a response to these folks, is ensure continued funding for existing contracts. They're claiming that funding is expiring on 12/31, and I don't know what's going on there. So what I will do in the meantime, and I really want to work with my board, I really think we all have this common interest of doing this work. I will work on my own with Emily, with H3S to get answers to this. I'm going to work on just coming up with a response. It can be from me, I'll make it clear, but I want to make sure that before I send it, that the board looks at it, if there's any other input or concerns, because on this stuff, we're all aligned, and I really want to speak. If the board doesn't want to respond and they have that perspective, I respect that, but I want to make sure that at least we're all aware of we need to respond to this, because it's concerning if contracts are going to end on 12/30. I haven't heard this from anyone.
Well, I just assume, Commissioner Fisher, I just assume, as staff has told us over and over again, these contracts expire quarterly and semi-annually or whatnot, so there's always, our H3S staff have told us, there's always contracts expiring in December and in June or in the quarterly.
Then we can answer that with it.
That doesn't mean that it has to lead to this kind of, basically, which leads to ultimately people being misinformed or misunderstanding. It shouldn't there. You know, this whole, Commissioner Fisher, all respect, I'm being respectful as possible. You are been our liaison on this HHS for a couple of years. And we have been surprised and haven't had the communication and the updates that led to this problem, okay? It seems to me that if there was a razor-sharp focus that a liaison person would have had, we would have spotted this issue early in the year as far as the funding. Early in the year, as far as the funding and the funding shortfall. There was no request for a loan until we found out afterwards that the money wasn't going to come. So for those who want to say, oh, you should have known that.
I know.
Well, then Commissioner Fisher, I would look to you.
I figure, if I had 20/20 hindsight vision, I would have known that the receipts of tax allocations would come in over a fiscal year. But I didn't think through that, and I didn't ask our finance staff to advise us. So I really wish I would have had that foresight for all of us. I mean, it was always that, oh, yeah, well, that does make sense that we would get most of the money after the taxes are paid in April.
The other thing I want to raise my card for is that just a time check. If we're going to go very, very long, then I want to make sure.
This is the last issue up
Okay.
for today besides Commissioner Communication.
I have none.
I have none. I'm going to recommend that we forego Commissioner Communication today. We've done that quite well. We're going to regroup, come back at 1:30. Gary, is that okay with you?
1:30 is your team building, so this will be your last public session for the day then.
Can I wait one more point on this issue, though, Chair? Will you indulge me? Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
One of the issues I had with this piece was not just my gut, but what we should have done, we're trying to operationalize something. What should have happened ahead of time was we should have done the LIP first. In other words, we should have all done a regional plan first and then looked at what the price tag should be. That's part of the problem. We really kind of did it backwards, because now we're trying to operationalize something that wasn't as fully thought out because it was kind of on the fly. That's just my observation. And again, I'm not going to throw rocks at people because I think it was all good intentioned, but, oh boy, that's a recipe for disaster. I mean, I got to tell you, like, we were involved with the LIP after the fact. The people here who were involved in housing, like, after a measure passed, and they said, oh, here's how we're going to spend the money, whereas we should have done the plan first, and then, do you see what I'm saying, Paul? I mean, do you get it?
Well, yeah, I think we planned for the money that, we mistakenly planned for about a bunch of money that was to come on a certain day, and actually, that was a year
Well,
away.
We should have had a plan then we could have looked at how to operationalize it, okay? So I'm just saying, I think it was cattywampus how the thing was constructed to begin with.
Well, the money didn't come in was the issue.
I know.
The projections, the Metro projected that we would have money by July 1st. It didn't come in because tax revenues weren't realized. The tax revenue payments weren't realized. That's the issue. And I don't think that this staff, this county was planning last year. They upped their plans, they moved some programs around, left some programs stranded after they found out the money wasn't coming in, hired 4 additional housing people for H3S. I mean, we were planning for it, it just wasn't realized, so I don't know what you're going to do about that, Paul.
Yeah, and in closing, and that is, I do a lot of work. I went on the Department of Revenue's website and looked for every tax form available. There is no mention of this amount to be withdrawn.
Withdrawn?
Sorry with English. But the point of the matter is that those forms should have been, the ask to DOR should have been last year. And had they been on the form, on the employee withholding forms, the tax would have been withheld. But because it was not on the form, and it's still not on the form, that's why, so you're delayed. Now, if that was
That's
Metro's
very
fault,
telling.
if that was Metro's fault not to give instruction to change the forms, we would have had a year jump start on this money.
I think.
But you can't expect the employers and people to pay a tax if they don't have it spelled out on their tax forms.
Yeah, I would agree. That's very telling. I think that needs to be brought back. Thank you very much. We are in adjournment.
Okay.